What is going on, IB Nation? Welcome to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. My name is Vince. That guy's Brian, and we got a lot kind of in store for you guys today.
Yeah.
So, the intention of this show is we are going to talk about the Notre Dame Bowl destination, what it means, why it's important. We're gonna do a cursory look at the opponent. What does that mean for Notre Dame?
Yeah.
Why is a win so important for Notre Dame? We're going to talk about all of that.
Like
And
little first glance,
Yeah.
first look at the opponent. We'll do deeper dives as we kind of get into the bowl prep as far as like, here's what they do on offense. Here's what they do on defense.
We got plenty of time
for
that to happen. Plenty of time. So we're going to talk about all that. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about the college football playoff and the decisions that were made earlier today and our kind of first reaction to all of that. We're going to jump into that first, actually. And just kind of, Brian and I were talking about this last night. We were kind of going back and forth about, what we thought was going to happen, what maybe should happen, what will happen, those kind of scenarios. And now that we have, what they did, let's talk about it and kind of our take on the whole thing. And so that's what we're going to do first. We're going to lead off with that.
When they do announce that who Notre Dame's bowl opponent is, we'll kind of just quickly maybe mention that, but we'll finish that playoff conversation first and then dive into the other part.
Right.
So just a heads up.
And the other thing, Brian, didn't mean to cut you off. We are not going to do a traditional mailbag today. If you've got a burning desire to ask a question, go ahead, put it in as a super chat. We'll get to it at the end. But of course, Monday is the entire show in the afternoon is a mailbag. So we will get to those mailbag questions tomorrow. No problem. And, the whole show's a mailbag. So just hold on to them till tomorrow. You'll get them all answered. And then if you've got one that's burning, throw us a super chat. We'll get after it. We'll answer your question, that kind of a deal. So, we're going to kind of keep it to an analysis type of a show today and then move on with the rest of our Sunday. So I've got a toilet to install, Brian. Priorities, baby. Priorities.
And honestly, I mean, it's just there's going to be a lot going on. So I believe they're actually getting ready to announce Notre Dame's bowl game here. I just saw the Pop-Tarts Bowl tweeted something. So let's see if they've announced theirs. Nope.
Of course not.
Just another silly Pop-Tarts thing from them.
It's hard for me to get on board with a name like Pop-Tarts. It's just
what's funny too is
I don't know
their name used to be kind of really good. It's Champ Sports Bowl,
right?
Like that was a little bit better than that one, but
absolutely.
But Vince, the college football playoff, we have our four, right?
We certainly do. Vince. We certainly do. So
Michigan number 1, Washington number 2, Texas number 3, Bama number 4. Let's just begin in Georgia 6. Let's begin first with the 1 versus 2 because it doesn't matter a ton. But I did kind of have a bit of an issue with that. I think Washington's overall resume is just better than Michigan's. I thought they should have been the 1. And then people have said, well, you can't make them this because they've got to play in this game. Or if they were the number 1, you'd have to find. Well, they put them in the Sugar Bowl anyway. It's like Washington's not even playing in the Rose Bowl. Michigan is. So it just made no sense. But, that's a minor thing. That's not really that big of a deal. But I did find it strange.
Because there's no way they were going to play each other. Like if Georgia would have won, you might have gotten a traditional, Pac-12, Big Ten matchup in the Rose Bowl, which I thought would have been cool, with kind of the demise of the Pac-12 and everything. It would have been one nice, final hurrah kind of a situation. So, but that got blown up yesterday when Georgia lost. So, that obviously was not going to happen because both of those teams were going to move up. One was going to be 1, one was going to be 2. There's no way they were going to play each other. Right. So, so much for awesome matchups, right? So, from just a personal standpoint, I cringe when I hear Michigan number 1. It's like,
I personally don't think Michigan should have been in it at all.
Well, that's different.
I mean, look, and it's not even about their resume wasn't good enough. If you take all the other nonsense aside, Michigan's a playoff team. They're 13-0. They won the Big Ten. No, their schedule wasn't hard, but they did what they needed to do. They beat the 2 top 10 teams. Although I still think it's an absolute joke that Penn State's a top 10 team. They have zero business.
Hilarious. They got blown out of the water in any good team that they played.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they were clearly inferior to Ohio State, even though the score wasn't like what you said, like a blowout, but it felt like it because they were just never threatening Ohio State to score, like at any point in time, like ever.
Right.
And so yeah, it is what it is. But that's where they are. That they are the 1 seed. I don't think they should have been in. For me, my personal opinion, Vince, I'd have gone Washington 1. I'd have gone Texas 2, Florida State 3, or excuse me, Bama 3, and Florida State 4. The reason I would have had it that way, well, actually, I would have gone, Florida State 3, Bama 4 is what I would have done, because I do think, you look at Florida State, and I've been back and forth on this one all weekend, Vince, with Florida State. That's what I would have done. And so if Michigan has to be in, then that drops Bama out. That's the team that should have been out. If you're going to keep Michigan in, that's the team that should have been out. I look at Florida State and I say, listen, they did not look very good the last 2 weeks. They're not the same team without Jordan Travis, but they just went and beat the number 15 team in the country by 10 in the conference title game with their third string quarterback. He's not going to play in the playoff. Tate Rodemaker is going to be back for the playoff. He had a concussion. He'll be back.
100%.
And, so at the end of the day, I understand it. I kind of felt this was what was going to happen. I told you last night that I thought they were going to screw Florida State over.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily what I think should have happened. I understand it. I understand the criteria they applied. I mean, and it's one of those weird years where the top 5 teams are all Power 5 champs. So like the whole conference thing's out the window. Now it's about overall resume and those type of things. And the reality is I think Florida State has every bit as good the quality resume that Alabama has. Well, Alabama has the best win, but but Florida State never lost.
Right.
And Alabama did. Alabama lost at home to another playoff team by 10. So to me, they should have been in
at home.
Yeah, at home.
At home. Like that. Right. That's kind of a kicker for me too, is that it happened at home. Like you couldn't even defend your home turf and you got beat by double digits. Like that part was tough for me when you go to the head-to-head. Because for me personally, I would have had Washington and Michigan, obviously, and you're splitting hairs 1-2 there. I get what you're saying. I get it. I totally get it. I think Michigan was already ranked higher, so I guess I'd put it.
Well, I mean, they shouldn't. It never should have been. But my thing is, but Texas was ranked lower last week, and they jumped some teams that didn't.
That's true.
Lose this week.
No, that's true.
It's supposed to be about let's reevaluate the resume now.
Right.
And the reality is, right now, Washington has same as many top 10 wins as Michigan. They beat the same team twice. They were a 10-point underdog in the Pac-12 title game and were the better team that game. And they have a win over Oregon State, who's another top 25 team.
Sure.
And they were kind of responsible for knocking out a couple other teams in the top 25. They knocked Utah out. So their overall resume is significantly greater. They outplayed Michigan State greater than Michigan did in the one matchup. I talked about this. Michigan State Michigan State Washington beat Michigan State 41-7. Michigan beat them, I think it was like 49-0. Michigan scored with 18 seconds left. They ran it up. Washington took a knee with 30 seconds left at the 10. They could have ran it up too. Washington outgained Michigan State like 700 something to, not a whole lot. And Michigan only had 400 some yards against Michigan State. So again, any metric you want to use, forget the cheating thing. Just look at the resumes. There's no justification from a resume standpoint. I don't care if they had them ranked number 1 last week. That's fine. You beat an Iowa team that's not very good. Washington just went and beat an Oregon team that you had 6th in your rankings last week for the second time.
Well,
won a rematch over a top 10 team for the second time.
The rankings aren't supposed to matter week to week. It's supposed to be fresh every week.
Right.
That is what the committee tells us. And so the fact, my own criteria when I just said Michigan was ahead of Oregon, go from last week, shouldn't matter. That should not matter. It's supposed to be week to week to week. You're supposed to evaluate everybody's resumes every single week and start fresh. That is true. So I would have had Washington, Michigan, Florida State and then Texas. Like that would have been my 4 because and for me, the debate
Can you give me your order again?
Washington, Michigan, Florida State, Texas.
Okay.
Like, that's what I would have had. And my reasoning is the 3 undefeated conference champs, they get to be 1, 2, 3 in whatever order you decide they need to be in. Okay. Then the debate is, okay, which 1-loss team gets that 4th slot? I would have picked Texas personally because it would have been, for me, between Texas and Alabama.
Right.
And Texas beat Alabama head-to-head on a neutral field.
Right.
And so I bumped Texas in. So that would have been my 4.
Well, and here's the immediate response. Well, how can you not have an SEC team in there? Because none deserved it.
Yeah.
There's ESPN has corrupted the conversation because there's so many people that say, I did this with Bill Bender on our show. Well, who'd be favored to win that game? I don't care who'd be favored to win that game.
Doesn't matter.
I mean, there are 3 and 4 loss SEC teams who'd be favored to beat 10, top 10 teams. Right? It doesn't mean that they should do it. Tennessee would be favored to beat a lot of teams. They wouldn't win them. Like here's the reality of it. Okay, the SEC as a conference. Okay, here's the problem. Too many people have. They keep looking at the SEC in the totality of the last 15 years.
Right.
There's no question who the best conference has been the last 15 years. It's the SEC, and it's not even close.
Absolutely.
It's not even close. Other conferences have had their moments, but the SEC has been consistently the best or the second best conference every single year, which makes them on the totality of it the best conference. But this year, the SEC was not the best conference. The ACC outplayed the SEC out of conference. I've said this again. North Carolina, who is a top half ACC team, smacked South Carolina, who led Georgia 14-3 at halftime, right? Your SEC champ barely needed a 4th and goal from the 31 Miracle last week to beat an Auburn team who got destroyed by 4 touchdowns by New Mexico State the week before, right? When you look at the resumes, your champ got played at home against the Big 12 champ, which I would argue is the worst Power 5 conference in college football this year. I made that argument a week ago and got smacked in the 4th quarter and lost by 10. They're not the same team they were then. Did you watch the Auburn game? Yes, they are. Did you watch them barely beat Texas A&M? Did you watch them barely beat Arkansas? They are that team. Oh, they beat Georgia. It was a great win. That yesterday was a great game by Bama. Great game. They bullied Georgia the whole game.
They did. They made it very clear that Georgia didn't belong in the top 4, in my personal opinion.
Oh, yes.
Because, and you and I talked about it on the phone, right? Georgia was down by 10. They go down and score to make it a 3-point game. Alabama gets the ball and just bludgeons bludgeons Georgia all the way down the field. Yeah. Just said, we're going to do whatever we want. Go down and score.
Keep going.
And it was embarrassing. Okay.
Well, and then Georgia comes back and scores again.
Right.
And then now they need to get a stop. And they couldn't.
I mean, Alabama just walked all over them.
And
they could have scored again. Alabama could have easily scored again at the end of that game, and they decided to run the clock. So Georgia couldn't get a stop when they needed to get a stop. They don't belong. I'm sorry.
It was
they don't belong.
Very reminiscent of what Coach Reese did last year against Clemson. Now, the opponent was better. Like, it was a more evenly matched game than Notre Dame Clemson was last year. And your quarterback played better. I mean, and you were playing a better offense. But as far as the physicality, the run game, the design of the run game, the using motions and personnel. But at the end of the day, all that stuff is good, and it was creative, and I liked what Coach Reese did game plan-wise. But at the end of the day, we beat your butts in the trenches. And every time you needed to make a play, you couldn't do it. Now, does that mean Georgia's not a heck of a football team? They are a heck of a football team. I'm totally fine with them being number 6. But the fact of the matter is that I understand the whole injury thing. And you say, well, they didn't look good against Louisville or Florida. Fair. But did Alabama look good 2 weeks or a week ago, barely a week ago against Auburn? Did they look like a playoff team to you?
Lucky.
Right, exactly. Frankly. They should have lost.
Yes.
And once again, what was it? My buddy Jeff said to me, Auburn's going to Auburn.
They did.
That's the new Clemson is you're Auburning. And so to me, I look at it like this and say, I understand. Well, SEC, I don't care about that. Look at the resumes. Well, they have more top 25 wins. I think the fact that Tennessee's still ranked in the top 25 is a joke. Like there's no win that justifies Tennessee being a top 25 team. So it's going to be a very interesting to kind of watch how these play out. So, I mean, I feel like, look, I understand why the committee left Florida State out. In my heart of hearts, as a Notre Dame fan, I'm kind of like, payback's a you-know-what, because I'm still a little bitter about 1993.
That's fair.
Not going to lie to you.
Yeah.
I'm still a little bitter about getting screwed over by that penalty at the end of the game in 2014. So I'm still a little bit as a Notre Dame fan,
right,
not feeling super sorry for Florida State fan base, but my heart gets ripped out for those kids because they had nothing to do with either of those things.
Right.
None of those kids were there in 14. None of those kids were born in 1993. They went out and beat the number 15, the team that you as the committee thought was the number 15 team in the country. They went out and beat it by 10 with their third string quarterback. If that doesn't tell you that as a team, they are much more than Jordan Travis, I don't know what else does. And they just beat an SEC team last week. Was it ugly? Yeah, it was ugly. But they still won. Now you get a month to prepare with your backup quarterback. You're going to be a better football team. So,
yeah.
To me, all due respect, the way the season played out, Bama didn't deserve to be in based on how the records and such of the other teams. And I don't care about what Bama would be favored to beat this team. It
doesn't matter.
Bama's a heck of a football team. And this is one of the few years, Vince, where there were multiple. I mean, Ohio State's resume this year gets them in other years.
Sure.
In other years, Bama's a no-brainer. Bama might be the 2 seed or 1 seed in other years.
Sure.
In 2017, this Bama team's the 1 seed, right? So this isn't to say Bama's not an excellent football team. It's to say, and Oregon might have had a case in past years because they wouldn't have had the rematch against Washington. They would have not played in the Pac-12 title game and just been sitting pretty at number 6, waiting on people to lose, saying, hey, our only loss was on the road to the number 2 team by a field goal. We have a case. There were some really good teams that had cases this season, Vince. There were 7 one-loss or undefeated teams in this conversation. We haven't seen that a whole lot. So, but at the end of the day, when you look at all the different criteria, to me, the head-to-head, how this team played against that team, and all these other type of things, to me, the 4 should have been Washington, Michigan, Texas, or Florida State and Texas, or Texas and Florida State, whichever way you want to go with it.
Yeah,
that's what it should have been.
That should have been the 4.
Yeah.
Now, can we talk about why there's only one reason that I'm glad that Florida State, I guess, didn't get in, but I had them at 3, so it wouldn't have made a difference, I guess.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna bring my pettiness into play here.
And I tweeted it last night, Vince. So I'm with you on this. Go ahead and say it.
Okay. Yeah. So anywhere, however it would have gone down, because so with my rankings, it would have been Michigan versus Florida State in the 2-3 matchup, and it would have been Texas and Washington in the 1-4 matchup, right? Well, a lot of people had Michigan 1 and Florida State 4, right? They bumped Texas up to 3, Florida State into 4. I didn't want that. I didn't want that because I don't want Michigan to have an easier road to get to the championship game. This is the 3rd consecutive time that they have gone to the college football playoff. They've yet to win a game. Mm-hmm. And I would love to keep that streak alive. Them getting Alabama makes me very happy because I really like Alabama in that particular matchup, right? And we'll break all that down. We'll talk about that over the next couple of weeks. But I'm very glad that Michigan didn't get a layup and get to face a backup quarterback.
Well, and again, I don't know that it would have been a layup, but it would have been a much easier game to win than if Jordan Travis played. And it would have been easier to win to me than Bama.
Fair enough.
Because, again, well, how can you say that when you said Florida State should be in over Alabama? Their resume is such, but also football's a game of matchups.
Right.
And I don't know that Florida State against that particular defense could win that game where Alabama matches up against that team better. Florida State would match up better against Washington than Alabama would, in my opinion, right? Yeah. So it's all about matchups.
Yeah.
So the ReliaQuest Bowl is going to have an SEC opponent against Wisconsin. So according
not Notre Dame.
So it looks like Notre Dame's Pop-Tarts or Holiday Bowl, so they will not be playing in the ReliaQuest Bowl. So the odds of them playing LSU in a bowl game is basically out the window.
It's basically 0
right now. So we'll see either Pop-Tarts Bowl in Orlando or Holiday Bowl. But Vince, no, your point is correct because I think Bama is a bad matchup for Michigan. Here's the other part. whatever your feelings are about Tommy Rees as a Notre Dame fan, a point that you and I have been making for a while now, whatever your feelings are about him as a coordinator, one thing you cannot deny, when Tommy Rees gets a length of time to prepare for a game, he is dangerous.
Sure.
I mean, going back to his very first game as coordinator against Iowa State, I mean, that was a great called game. Even the Bama game in 2020, the game plan, Vince, you and I, this was the first, like, I think, live show we did, I believe, was the post-game show against Alabama. I believe that was our first live show, wasn't it? Did we go live that night?
I think so.
I think we went live. I believe that's the first live show we ever did. One thing, I mean, like the game plan early on was really good. And then all of a sudden Brian Kelly kind of steps in and it's like, let's just run the clock out. But like pass game wise, he did some really nice things early. And then you look at the Oklahoma State game, you know, his last year, after 2021. And then last year's bowl game against South Carolina. I mean, game plan wise, there's some really good stuff in that game last year, dude. So when you look at what Tom Rees has done, what time to prepare, he is very dangerous. And now he's got, you know, that staff and Nick Saban working with him. So, and did you see the reaction of the Michigan people when they announced that Bama was the 4? Did you see that video?
No, I didn't.
There's a video going around, and it was like take a shot, like right behind Jim Harbaugh. He was there, and they're watching the screen and they're making their announcement. And when they announced Bama, there was like, oh, just like a whole room was like, oh. And then like, oh, okay, yeah, great, Bama. But there was no, like, they were thinking it was going to be Florida State.
Florida State, 100%.
They were like,
wanted
oh,
Florida
no,
State.
we got Bama.
And look, if I'm a Michigan person, I want Florida State too.
Yeah.
I mean,
oh, yeah.
Because of the ease of getting, you always want the best competition, and I get all that.
If you're a competitor,
I get that.
Yes, you want that. Bama.
But I also want to get to the championship. So, you know, I would be torn. I would honestly be torn if you gave me the option of Florida State or Alabama, because yes, I'm a competitor. I want to beat the best to be the best. There's no doubt about it. But I look at it from like a dad point of view, and I was, you know, looking at the path for my son to make it to state. It's like, I was hoping guys would get knocked off so that they would have an easier road. You know what I'm saying? So like, because you just want to get to the dance. So I get why Michigan fans might be upset that they didn't get to see Florida State. But as the person that I am, I'm ecstatic that Michigan got Alabama. And so as you stated in your tweet, Brian, I will be a very large
Roll
Alabama
Tide
fan.
Roll Tide.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I don't think they deserve to be in, but I'm also not going to sit here and say it's a homer job. It's only because, I mean, the only reason they're in is because they're in the SEC. But it's not like Bama's some bad team that has no business in the conversation. I mean, they do. But I just don't think the entirety of the entire season. Like, I just still get so tired of that. We're not the same team we were then. The only game that you can look at and say we're not the same team as we were then is South Florida, because Jalen Milroe didn't play. That's the only game. But you can't say we're a different team than we were against Texas, because I'm like, no, you're not, because the team that played last weekend against Auburn would get murdered by Texas. Right. The team you were 8 days ago would get destroyed by Texas, who's outscored their last two opponents. What is it, Vince? Like 106-28, right? So, that part of the matchup, Vince, I like very much.
Yeah,
I like that very, very much.
Absolutely. So we'll see, you know, how it all plays out. I mean, I'm looking forward to those games, to be honest with you. But
can we just, before we just, I mean, because Notre Dame's bowl opponent should be announced here in a minute, but I do want to kind of just, okay, we talked about who should or shouldn't be in. I will say this: take away who should or shouldn't be in. On paper, this is one of the best semifinals we've had.
Yeah, agreed.
Like Michigan versus Alabama. I mean, you've got 4 teams with great tradition. Some of it further in the past. I mean, Washington's tradition is more like the 90s, but you know, this is not Washington's first playoff appearance. This is their second playoff appearance. And they were far more competitive against Alabama in their matchup than Notre Dame was in their matchup against Alabama, if we're being honest. Their defense actually played really well in that game. They just couldn't score. That ain't a problem with this team. But the Washington-Texas game, I mean, talk about storylines. The head coach at Texas, where'd he come from? You know, he used to be the head coach of Washington. The defensive coordinator at Texas, Pete Kwiatkowski, he came from Washington. So there's that storyline. The whole Texas is back thing. Washington answering all the doubters all year, Washington just silencing the critics all season about, they're going to win this week. Nope, they're not. They're going to lose this week. They're going to lose this week. No, they're not. They're going to lose this week. No, they're not. They're going to lose this week. No, they're not. And you and I were the only people for our staff to pick them to beat Oregon in the rematch. Because, you can say whatever you want, but the game's is going to be in good weather. Because that's the thing I think people miss about Washington. They're a passing team that was playing in crap Northwestern weather the last month. All their games are either at home or against a road team in Oregon or Washington, right? And it was going to be good weather, and they were getting Jalen McMillan back. And if it came down to who do you trust more, Bo Nix or Michael Penix, as much as I like Bo Nix, I've been promoting Bo Nix. I still think Michael Penix is the better player. So they deserved it. They've silenced all the critics. They'll probably be an underdog against Texas, I'll bet you. That's just I don't know if I would assume that at least the first spread's already out. So but that would just be my gut. But I love what they're doing there. And Texas is just, their starting running back goes down. They don't miss a beat. Quinn Ewers goes down. They keep winning. They've just done everything they needed to do since the Oklahoma game. And the thing that Texas needed, Vince, they needed to finish strong. If they just beat Texas Tech by a field goal and beat Oklahoma State yesterday by a touchdown, Florida State's in and Texas is out. That's what it would like. Hey guys, you kind of limped down the stretch. They had to have some style points in the last couple games. Somebody just said Texas -4. See? I told you.
Oh, and I would.
The doubters for Washington.
If I'm Kalen DeBoer, I'm riding that underdog train as far as it'll take me. 100%.
Yeah. We were just a 10-point dog to Oregon. Yeah. But Texas, to me, they did what they needed to do the last month. They won games on the road in their conference with their quarterback out. They lost their starting running back. But they went out and they did what they needed to do since the Oklahoma game. And so and then Michigan, as much as I hate Michigan and the cheating, Michigan's still a really good football team. I don't think they're one of the four best. I think their schedule helped them
for sure
be one of the four best. They're one of the four best because of how I define best. They won the games they're supposed to win. They had to beat Ohio State. They had to beat Penn State. They had to beat Iowa, and they did it. So they deserve to be in there. They're just not, to me, one of the four teams I would most be afraid of. How about that?
Yeah.
Right. So the way that ESPN defines best, I don't think Michigan's one of the four best. The way that the committee defines four best, they deserve to be one of the four best.
Sure.
If you're going to overlook their, their whole cheating thing, which the committee did.
Which annoys me because the NCAA moves at a snail's pace on a lot of this stuff. And that's, look, Michigan's probably going to lose most of their coaching staff because they don't want to get burned by all of this. And, I'm just very hopeful that they don't go out and win the national championship and then everybody fails. That would be something else. Like that would be the NCAA in a nutshell for me. And that would be a big problem.
Yeah.
And so I just hope that they go out on a losing note. Because that would be pretty unbearable to watch because I have zero faith that Jim Harbaugh comes back next year because he knows what's coming down the pipe.
Yeah,
he knows.
Yeah, well, I think so. We'll see about that.
It's going to be
We'll have plenty of time to talk about.
Well, it's going to be very Pete Carroll-ish. Like he wasn't an idiot either. He knew what was coming.
Oh yeah.
So,
but I do think you. Here's the other thing I like about the semis. It's kind of like let's go take the two best physical old school bully ball teams. Who are the two best in that department? It's Michigan and Bama.
Sure.
And let's put them together. Then let's take the two best kind of new school, spread the field, high octane, throw the football, modern offense, put them in a semifinal, and then take the best of those two match up in the championship game.
It's kind of storybook in that regard.
Yeah.
I do dig that.
Yeah. So once you get past the whole, this team shouldn't have been in, that team should have been in, whatever the case may be, the fact of the matter is I still think this is going to be a very good Final Four. Much better than the last few years. Last year, Georgia Ohio State was going to be a great game. Michigan TCU ended up being a great game, but I wasn't necessarily looking forward to watching it, although I did pick TCU to win that game. And year before was like Cincinnati and Georgia, or Cincinnati and Bama, and Georgia and Michigan, and you knew Michigan had zero chance against Georgia a couple years ago. So to me, I think those are going to be four. Those are two, to me, potentially really good games. Like, I think Bama's going to beat Michigan. I don't think it's going to be this shellacking where Michigan's going to get beat by. I mean, it could be. I mean, anything can happen. I didn't think TCU would lose by 50. Was it 58 to Georgia? I mean, I thought Georgia would win and win comfortably, but I thought it'd be at least a competitive game for a while. You know, I didn't think Clemson was going to destroy Alabama in 2018. So, I mean, anything can happen, but I think it'll be a competitive game. I just don't think that that Michigan will win. I do think it'll be a good game, though. I do.
Yeah.
Michigan's they're too well coached to me for this to be a blowout.
It's funny because, you know, there have definitely been matchups in the past, and when they do the Final Four and the college football playoff and all that have not interested me because they were going to be blowouts, or it just didn't interest me. I'll be honest with you. And I'm kind of that guy who, unless my team's involved, I don't really want to watch. I am that guy. Now I still watch, you know, because of this job and because I do enjoy football, and I know that it's coming to a close here pretty quickly. So I do watch the games, but these are actually intriguing matchups. I like some of the coaching matchups. I like some of the player matchups. I mean, there's obviously ties to Notre Dame throughout, right? Because I have a hatred for Michigan because I'm a Notre Dame guy. And, you know, you got Tommy Rees on the Alabama side. So, I mean, that one by itself is just intriguing on a bunch of different levels, right? And then you get the other side, and I've been a Michael Penix fan since he was at IU. I mean, I really enjoyed watching him kind of run around and just be crazy and doing his thing when he had that season at IU. And so following him to Washington, I thought that was, you know, a great fit for him. And obviously being reunited with his offensive coordinator meant something. Coaches meshing with players makes them better. It's a novel concept. But anyway, I really like that. And so I like what Washington does. And to be honest with you, look, Quinn Ewers is not a guy that I was a huge fan of during the recruiting process and coming out early and all the NIL talk and then leaving after his first year and all of that stuff, right? He's a darn good football player. And I do like what Sarkisian has done down at Texas. And in the same vein that, you know, college football is better when certain teams are better, college football is better when Texas is better.
Yeah. I mean, Texas was getting so much hype preseason. I was like, can we just let them prove it first? Right. Like, you know, and guess what, Vince? They did.
Yeah,
they did. I mean, I was like, look, could Texas be this good? Sure. Will they? How about we let them prove it first? Quinn Ewers is an interesting story too, because, and by the way, guys, part of the reason we're still continuing this conversation is because they still have not released the Notre Dame.
So frustrating.
So just so you know, like, the Holiday Bowl is live right now. They're doing a live Instagram thing, and it's just a podium because they were supposed to already have their opponents done, and they just tweeted out a picture of the Cookie Monster going like this, like I'm waiting, like, and it's like it literally says us right now because like they're waiting, they're thinking they're already going to have their opponent.
And that's the thing, folks. Like,
right,
Notre Dame doesn't necessarily have a say in where they go for the most part. Okay. And the Bulls, other
than telling a bowl no.
Right. And the Bulls don't really have a whole lot of say. These lower ones don't have a whole lot of say in who goes where. And so they're literally waiting. Like, I think that's hilarious that they're doing
like
that,
there's some things that they can do with the conference. Like LSU petitioned the reports are that LSU petitioned their league to not have to play Notre Dame. And I don't really, I mean, we could talk trash, but I don't view it as like a,
that's interesting.
Oh, they're afraid of Notre Dame. It's like it's a lose-lose for Brian Kelly in a lot of ways. I mean,
100%.
Especially with the guys they're probably not going to have. They've played Notre Dame twice already in the last 10 years, so there's not like a novelty to it. Like, honestly, if I was LSU, I wouldn't want to play Notre Dame either. And it's not because I'm afraid of Notre Dame.
Sure.
It's just more about like, you know, can we get somebody different? You know, we've been down this road before. So I could talk trash. Oh, you were scared of Notre Dame. I don't think that was it. I just think when Brian Kelly's like, that's going to be the questions, and it's like, dude, I just don't want that headache.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want that headache. And I may not have Jaden Daniels. I may not have, you know, I mean, I'm not taking shots at Brian Kelly for that one. I mean, I get it. So, but they can do things like that. Hey, can you guys take Tennessee instead of LSU? The conferences can lobby on behalf of teams with the people they have relationships with to say, hey, we'd really like to have LSU in the Gator Bowl,
right?
And could you guys, could you guys take Tennessee instead of LSU,
right? So there's some jockeying behind the scenes and that nature, right? I mean,
it's not like LSU can't call up a bowl and say, hey, we don't want to play so-and-so.
Right.
It's not like that.
And Notre Dame has to be, I want to throw this out there too, Brian, and you can tell me if I'm full of beans or whatever, but Notre Dame can't be super duper picky about what bowl they go to because they're in a great position to be kind of affiliated with the ACC in all of their bowls. And so if they just come stomping in, carrying a big stick and they're like, we're going here, we're like,
they can't tell the people what bowl they want to play in. But I mean, there's merit to Notre Dame being like, yeah, we don't really want to do that one.
I get that.
Because then they can, right. There's a right way and a wrong way. No, they shouldn't walk in and just start demanding things, but that's part of the negotiation process, to be honest with you, is to have those conversations. So
yes, and make it a conversation, not a dictatorship, because if Notre Dame didn't have the affiliation with the ACC, their bowl options would be extremely limited. I mean,
to a degree. I mean, they could easily negotiate directly with certain bowls and say, hey, listen, when your contract with whoever's up, make sure that you do this. So, I mean, I know that's the narrative, but I mean, there'd be plenty that Notre Dame could do if they wanted to. It's just, it's better. But again, but Notre Dame doesn't necessarily do that on their own. That's part of the negotiation with the league.
Right.
Hey, 100%. We don't really want to play in this game. We've played in this game. Like, hey, let's say that Notre Dame was set to play in the Gator Bowl. Hey guys, we played in the Gator Bowl last year. Can we, can you guys advocate for a switch? We'd like to go play in, whatever, Pop-Tarts Bowl. Our kids love Pop-Tarts. They want to eat the giant Pop-Tart and they're really looking forward to that all week. So, we really like to do that. And, so there's certain things that they can do. So, I mean, they have a say, but it's a very, very limited say. And at the end of the day, if everybody's like, nope, this is what we want, then that's just what you're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm on the live feed that you were on, and I'm looking at the podium.
It's literally just a podium.
It's a beautiful view behind the podium of the ocean or whatever they got going on back there, and
So let's just, Vince, we can wrap up the college football playoff stuff talk, and then we got to start talking about the Notre Dame bowl game and the options that are still out there. And then when it's announced, we can kind of dive into it. So let's just quickly wrap up this part of it. So
absolutely, I agree. And we've got the Final Four. We've kind of given our take on what we would have done and what has happened and the matchups and all that fun stuff. And we'll have plenty of time to dive in as well.
Can I say one more thing? I literally had said this to myself. If they somehow, because my biggest fear was that they were going to keep Texas out and put Georgia and Bama in. That was my biggest fear.
Yeah. Agreed.
And I said to myself, if Bama and Georgia both get in, I'm not watching. I'm not watching. So I'm happy because at the end of the day, Vince, take away who should have been in, whatever. The 4 teams that are in is going to make, in my opinion, a very compelling playoff. This is going to be one of my favorite playoff, just at least thinking going in. So I'm going to be more excited about this playoff than really anyone since probably 2019. Like that one was like, LSU, Oklahoma, you knew it was going to win that one, but that Ohio State Clemson game was going to be epic, and it was. And then you had the defending champs against Joe Burrow, and it just, it's not since 2019 have I been this kind of fired up about just a playoff,
watching the playoff and just being excited about it, and not necessarily having a dog in the fight, but just watching good football.
And also saying like, that team I probably wouldn't have put them in, but it's still like, they're a really good team. It's going to be a good bowl game. That's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be very fun to watch.
Absolutely. All right, so let's turn our attention to the Notre Dame side of things, Brian. We're obviously still waiting for official, announcement by which bowl Notre Dame's going to be in. Yeah. It is down to, in my opinion, and from what I'm hearing, it's down to Pop-Tarts Bowl, Holiday Bowl. That those seem to be the 2 options that are on the table right now. ReliaQuest Bowl is already off of the table,
right?
Because Wisconsin, I believe, is going to be in that against an SEC team. I don't think that side of things has been announced. But
go ahead, Vince.
But yeah, it knocks Notre Dame out because they would have been on the Big Ten ACC side of things.
There's always going to be an SEC team in there.
Right.
So like you said, it's down to the Pop-Tarts Bowl, which is Notre Dame has actually played in twice in the last 12, 13 years.
Yeah, recently.
They played in it in 2011 against Florida State. At the time, it was known as the Champ Sports Bowl.
Right.
And they also played in it in 2019 against Iowa State when it was called the Camping World Bowl. So it's that same bowl. It was the Cheez-Its Bowl last year, and now it's that. LSU, it just got announced LSU is going to be playing Wisconsin in the ReliaQuest Bowl.
There you go. So they ended up in the ReliaQuest Bowl.
Yeah. So my thought, Vince, is that as we're looking at it, my thought is that it's going to be the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Okay. And it's going to be the Pop-Tarts Bowl. My guess would be against Kansas State. That's my prediction based on all the things that are happening and all the things that are being placed. I never really bought the Holiday Bowl one, but it was an option. And so here's why the ReliaQuest Bowl isn't happening from what I've been able to read. From The Athletic had a report on it last night, and I believe Brett McMurphy had a report on it last night. So essentially, when Georgia got beat and the anticipation was they'd be knocked out, that changed the Orange Bowl matchup. The Orange Bowl matchup was going to be a Big Ten team, Ohio State, against an ACC team, Louisville.
Oh, gotcha.
That's what people are saying. So when Georgia got knocked out, now Georgia's now gets the Orange Bowl. That moves Ohio State over to the Cotton Bowl, and it basically moves all the – my understanding, this is what they reported, it moves all the Big Ten teams like up a bowl game, essentially, somehow. And so that meant the ACC was out of the ReliaQuest, and the Big Ten was now going to take that spot. So that's why even though as of last night, almost everybody was predicting Notre Dame to the ReliaQuest Bowl, I wrote my breakdown. I don't think that's going to happen based on what The Athletic and Brett McMurphy were saying, because I think that was the most compelling argument based on how yesterday's games went. And so that's and I think only one person had the Holiday Bowl. I didn't think that one made as much sense, but it is an option. I kind of felt the Pop-Tarts Bowl, and then you're like, well, who are you going to play? It was either going to be Oklahoma State or Kansas State. Well, Oklahoma State's already been placed in a bowl game. I believe they're playing Texas A&M in the Texas Bowl, which will be interesting. So it looks like it's going to be Kansas State, but obviously we don't have official word on that yet. But that's kind of what we're thinking. So those are the bowl options, and it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. But they also had some other New Year's 6 games released events. So there's as much as I am fired up about the playoff, I'm not at all fired up about the other New Year's 6 games.
No.
You've got Oregon against Liberty. That's going to be a bloodbath.
Yep.
You've got Florida State and Georgia. I can only imagine how many kids from those schools are going to sit out that game.
Georgia's going to have a ton.
Yeah.
Georgia will have a ton. I think
hope all those Florida State kids stay and play.
I think the Florida State kids stick around because I think they still have a statement to make. Personally, like if you're just looking at it from that point of view, I feel like Florida State has a statement to make. And whether Georgia has their full contingent, which they won't, I think a bunch of guys are going to bail from Georgia. I think it's going to be like a race to the door, frankly. But Florida State can still say they beat Georgia, and that's what they can put that in their back pocket.
We got something to finish. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
So if Florida State's kids stay in too, that could be a good game. Missouri, Ohio State. It depends on how many Ohio State guys play. I mean, if like Marvin Harrison and those guys play, I think it'd be a really good game. I think Missouri's a good football team. Like they are genuinely a good football team. And, does Marvin Harrison play? Does Emeka Egbuka play? Does JT play? Does Tommy Eichenberg? I don't know. Does Denzel Burke? I don't know. Does Trayvon Henderson play? I don't know the answers to those questions. It's just that's kind of basically how it goes.
Right.
So, that's kind of where you're at with that. So, but the other one is, and this is a game I actually think will have a lot of kids play because both teams have a lot of underclassmen. The Peach Bowl is the one that actually looks somewhat interesting. Ole Miss against Penn State. Although I think if Ole Miss's entire team plays, I think they win that one comfortably.
I do too.
But that could be a decent game. So it's not a super exciting. I mean, the Citrus Bowl, this might be one of the worst Citrus Bowl matchups ever. Tennessee and Iowa. Like, that is just going to be an ugly, boring game. just a terribly ugly, boring game. So, Vince, as we kind of wait for this silliness to be announced, I don't know why it's like state secrets or something like this with these bowl matchups. But hey, Texas Tech and Cal in the Independence Bowl. Woohoo! They also announced that Minnesota's playing in a bowl game. They went 5-7
against Bowling Green.
Gross.
In the Quick Lane Bowl. They're playing in Detroit, so it's almost like, hey, you get a bowl game in Detroit.
So we can kind of reverse engineer our show a little bit, Vince, because there are certain things that we were going to talk about during the show where we were going to make the point, like, look, guys, part of this is really just about it doesn't even matter who the opponent is. This is a game you have to win, man. And I know that people say bowl games don't matter, and they don't matter from the standpoint of, if you lose, you can't be good the next season. I mean, Texas lost to Washington last year. I think it was the Alamo Bowl, right? Well, now they're both in the playoff. So, I mean, so it can happen. And, Notre Dame lost in the Champ Sports Bowl the year before they went 12-0 the next year. Okay, so it happens. Notre Dame lost a bowl game the year before. They got smacked by Texas A&M in a Cotton Bowl the year before they went undefeated and won the national championship back in 1988. So it doesn't necessarily define it, but I think Notre Dame is in a unique situation, Vince, because somebody just said perception. That's part of it from a recruiting standpoint. I think it's more about momentum.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more about going into the offseason with some positive vibes, because there's a lot of negative vibes around the program, much more so with the fans than in the locker room. Some of the guys that left are great locker room guys. Like losing Nano Safa-Mensah, losing Zeke Carell as just two examples, Chris Tyree. Those are great kids. I'm not saying other kids weren't. I'm just making a point. Like, there's some really good locker room guys there, but there are a lot of situations to me that were creating some issues that has been kind of removed. And I think that this team is going to kind of be focused, or at least they need to be focused, and we'll see how they are. But I really think it's about just building confidence. I think this football team, with everything that's happened this year, the disappointment of this team thought they could compete for a championship and they went 9-3. This team thought after the loss to Ohio State and Louisville, hey, we're going to still go to New Year's Six Bowl and show something. And then they went and lost to Clemson. There's been a lot of things, mostly self-inflicted, that have gone on with this football team. I really believe the guys that are going to come back need positive vibes coming into the offseason.
Nope, I agree with all of that. And I feel like, first of all, yes, Notre Dame's going to accept a bowl bid. They're going to be fine. They have plenty of guys on the roster to play in a bowl game.
Just for the record, they're going to have the same number of healthy wide receivers and tight ends this year as they did last year. Just want to throw that out there.
Thank you.
Just same exact number. And at tight end, they're probably better off.
Correct.
As far as like proven experience, last year was Mitchell Evans, who missed half the year, only had one catch coming into that game.
Right.
And then they had Holden Stace, who was a true freshman, who I think caught one pass all year, and then Davis Sherwood. This year they'll have Eli Raridan, Cooper Flanagan, and Davis Sherwood. So, it's not ideal.
And it never is. It's not ideal for anybody.
But it's one game. They'll have 6 healthy scholarship receivers ready for the game. And I'm more concerned about the likelihood that they won't have both of their tackles than I am about not having enough wide receivers in this game.
Right.
But for all those circumstances, I mean, this team needs that momentum, Vince. This fan base needs that momentum. And there's some people that are going to be like, I don't care what happens in the bowl game. It's the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Okay, that's fine. I mean, no one's saying that I'm so excited that Notre Dame is going to be in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. This is such a great success for Marcus Freeman in year 2 to be in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that at all. We've said before, this season will be considered a disappointment because of the expectations.
Correct.
But that doesn't mean that what happens in the bowl game doesn't matter to this football team, because you got some really good energy to finish the season, and they went out and won their last 2 games by a combined score of 101 to what was it, 30? What did Stanford scored 23, right? It's 56-23.
Yeah, I think so.
And then Wake Forest scored 7, so 30. So those are the things you look at, Vince, and say, this team needs to build on that and get a win in a bowl game. And I don't care who it's against, because it's at the end of the day, we'll break down the opponent a little bit.
Sure.
But the first and foremost thing, and Marcus Freeman talks about this all the time, it is incredibly true in this bowl game. This bowl game is about Notre Dame. And what kind of character do you want to have? Because this is going to be our first glimpse into next year's football team in a lot of ways. Because they're not going to have Joe Walton, Blake Fisher most likely next year at offensive tackle. So could these two guys be that thing? Sure. Could certainly be that. We're going to get a glimpse into, the most likely, I mean, again, nothing's been announced yet, but there's a good chance this is going to be our first glimpse to see what the backfield is going to look like post Audric Estime potential, that we're going to see who the cornerback's going to be competing for Cam Hart spot. There's a chance for that. And we know certain guys are going to play. We know Chris Tyree's not going to play. We know Tobias Merriweather's not going to play. We know that, Nana Osafo-Mensah's not going to play, which means we're going to have to see some younger guys. There's no debate about, do you start the young center again? There's not that debate anymore. So those are things that we're all going to get a chance to kind of look at with Notre Dame and say, hey, who is this football team going to be? And really get some energy to where some of these younger players who haven't played a whole lot, like what if one of Drake or J.D. Bertrand or Maris Leofau or Jack Kaiser doesn't play in a bowl game? I mean, there's still a lot of things we don't know, but at the end of the day, what we do know is this team needs a win here to get the positive momentum, because of the way the season played out, because of the disappointment of the way the season went out. Ending the season on a winning note will be very good for culture creation, as Marcus Freeman looks. Because I'll say this, Vince, that is something that I look at this football program, and then you kind of get some time to take a step back and watch games yesterday. You're like, there's just something missing at Notre Dame right now from a leadership standpoint, where there's not that guy that says, hey, it's a big moment, I'm going to go make this play.
Sure.
I'm going to get in this guy's face. I'm going to make sure that this happens. They just don't have that kind of that killer instinct culture. And who are those guys going to be? And these practices in this game is your first chance to establish identity. And again, we've been here before. I kind of feel like this is a much better team than the 2014 team. Much better team, much better results. That team finished 7-5, but there was just so much negative energy around the team late that year. If you remember, Vince, lost to Louisville, lost to Northwestern. It's kind of similarly negative energy this year because the expectations were so much higher for this team than they were for that team. That you really felt like that win over LSU, which nobody thought Notre Dame had a chance to win, really sent them into the offseason with just a lot more positive energy. And those are things that can come out of this game, that need to come out of this game, Vince. And if you don't win, does it mean you're not going to be good next year? No, it doesn't mean that. It just means you're going to have to, adapt it. You know what I mean? So it's going to be very interesting.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, yeah, you can talk about, momentum going into the offseason. You can talk about momentum on the recruiting trail. Look, I can sell you a 10-win season a heck of a lot easier than I can sell you a 9-win season. And here's the reality of the situation, Brian. When we fast forward 2 or 3 years from now, and we're talking about, the Marcus Freeman tenure and all of that, we can talk about the 2023 season being disappointing, not living up to expectations, but you can still talk about it being a 10-win season. And when you talk about it being a 10-win season, it just is different when you're talking about a double-digit win season than you are talking about a 9-win season. And nobody's going to be like, well, but one of those wins was the Pop-Tarts Bowl, and one of those wins was against Tennessee State.
I mean,
like,
look,
that's just not not the reality of how things work. It's just not. And so you're looking back, right? This is about what this program is now and what this program is striving to become, right? And so is it a stride forward? No. But is it a step? Is 10 wins a step in the right direction? It is. And so you can build on that. You can use that as momentum, okay? 10 wins, that's the bottom line for me. They got to get to 10 wins. You got to get to 10 wins. You have to. And I don't care what bowl it's in at this point. I don't. I don't care, because whether it's the ReliaQuest Bowl, the Pop-Tarts Bowl, you know what? The Pop-Tarts Bowl has a stupid name, right? I don't care. It still counts as a W,
right?
Okay, and I don't want to go to Orlando anymore.
I don't necessarily want to go to San Diego for the Holiday Bowl either.
Right. It's just, yeah.
So
exactly.
I do want to say this, Vince. Brett McMurphy just put a tweet out, and it's like, this is just such like prime ACC dysfunction. Like every time I think like, you know what, I think I'm ready to go to the ACC and get into a conference. It's just ridiculous. So his tweet goes, first Florida State gets snubbed from the playoff. Now ACC bowls are in a holding pattern as bowls are battling over Notre Dame, NC State, Louisville, Clemson, North Carolina, Miami, and Virginia Tech. So what a lot of these bowls are doing are saying, hey, this team will play an ACC team. This team will play an ACC team.
That's true.
And we're seeing a lot of that. So I don't know when they're going to announce it, Vince, to be completely honest with you.
It's just because
it's just a train wreck.
It's just the family infighting. It's like, hey, welcome to our Thanksgiving dinner. We're all arguing about something. Like that's what it feels like. And so we may not know the duration of this show when Notre Dame's going to end up playing. But the bottom line is they need to win this game. They need to win this game for all the reasons that we just outlined. They need to win.
And I will say this. I'm almost borderline wanting to plan the Holiday Bowl now because whoever's running their Twitter account is freaking awesome. Like they're just like the whole, like the tweet about like the guy waiting like us right now. And then like here's another one. Kentucky will play an ACC team in the Gator Bowl. But their recent one is they quote tweeted Brett McMurphy's tweet and said, and their quote tweet, their response to quote tweet was a picture from the Anchorman street fight. And it's like, all right, let's do this. And they've got like their weapons out. Like, I don't know who the heck is in charge of their Twitter account, but like that person's like really doing a good job today.
It's not even the Will Ferrell group getting ready to fight. It's the Vince Vaughn.
It's the Vince Vaughn group.
It's the Vince Vaughn group getting ready to fight.
That makes it even better.
That makes it 1,000 times better. Yes. So I love that.
Now we can talk about a team. Yeah. Here's another. Oregon State will play an ACC team in the Sun Bowl. So if Notre Dame goes to the Holiday Bowl, it won't be Oregon State.
No, that good point.
But could Notre Dame get sent to the Sun Bowl?
Is that the one in El Paso?
Yes. Which, we'll have to have a conversation about that one.
We're gonna have a team meeting about wherever this is happening, wherever this is going.
We're gonna have to pay for flight, hotel, and armed security to go to and from places.
Or we can just stay home.
Yeah, but anyway, some little tidbits I would expect over the next 3-4 days. Once the bowl game is announced and Notre Dame starts getting into finals, I would anticipate we start hearing more and more. I say over the next week, and about
who's playing, who's not.
Yeah,
basically
who's not going to play,
opting out, not transferring, but opting out of the bowl game,
right.
Which gives you an idea of what their plans are moving forward. And, they're going to the NFL, et cetera, et cetera. So I agree with you. I think they're waiting for the bowl to be announced and then making those decisions. And then,
we had talked at the beginning of the show, Vince, too, that it looked like it was either going to be Holiday or Pop-Tarts Bowl, but with this absolute chaos. So it can't be the Holiday Bowl now because they just announced that USC is going to play in the Holiday Bowl. There's no way they have USC and Notre Dame playing a rematch in the Holiday Bowl, right?
No way.
So
I would think.
I mean, I got to think now it's either the Pop-Tarts Bowl or the Sun Bowl.
Oh, God. The choices just keep getting worse.
Yes.
I'm sorry. That's my initial reaction.
Yes. 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 So it's getting very interesting, man. Very interesting as we look and find out who the opponent is. So they have announced some of the opponents. So again, you've got USC is going to be in the Holiday Bowl.
That's interesting. By
You've got Oregon State's in the Sun Bowl, Kentucky in the Gator Bowl. Those are all options against an ACC team. And then now here's the interesting thing. The Pop-Tarts Bowl has not said anything or nothing has been released about the Pop-Tarts Bowl as far as who might be the opponent. So I would imagine it's Kansas State, but I just haven't seen anything yet. Yeah. So, and of course, Brad Crawford at 247 Sports is blaming this all on Notre Dame. Here's his dumb tweet. He says, Notre Dame always muddies up the bowl picture. Last year, the Irish were wanted by several bowls before landing in the Gator. Now Pop-Tarts is buying for the Golden Domers. So what your argument is that this irrelevant team that everybody talks about
right.
is one too much and coveted too much by all these teams.
How does that? I mean, okay, maybe it mucks things up for him and his travel plans, but like, I don't understand. Yeah, they're so wanted. It's not the the other way around.
You got to put a negative spin on that. By the way,
we got to take Notre Dame.
The Pop-Tarts Bowl is upping their Twitter game right now.
Oh, really?
The Pop-Tarts Bowl just put a tweet out, and it's a meme, and it just says loading, and it's just loading. So they're all kind of waiting, but it sounds from a lot of the different things that I'm reading on Twitter, Vince, it sounds like Notre Dame is the issue from the standpoint of everyone. That's kind of the one everyone's
once they get placed, everybody else.
Once they figure out who gets Notre Dame, it'll make everything else will kind of fall into place. So it does look like that's where we're at right now, as far as they're competing to get Notre Dame in their bowl. Now, who's going to win? I don't know the answer to that, but we shall see.
And when is the Pop-Tarts Bowl, Brian?
That's a good question. Let me look up the bowl schedule. Let's go.
Oh, never mind. It's Thursday the 28th. Thursday the 28th at 5:45.
So right after Christmas. Wonderful.
Random time. Yeah, I know, right?
When's the Holiday Bowl and Sun Bowl?
The Holiday Bowl is even earlier. It's the 27th, I believe.
Okay. And then the Sun Bowl is the 29th.
Okay, I was gonna say I hadn't even looked at the Sun Bowl.
Sun Bowl is the 29th. That's the same one it's the same day as the Gator Bowl, which Notre Dame played in last year, and it's the Liberty Bowl and the Actually, that's also the day of the playoff games.
Oh, okay.
So that's a 2:00 kickoff. Pop-Tarts Bowl is a 5:45 kickoff.
Just weird.
And then the Holiday Bowl, you said it's an 8:00 kickoff.
I think that's on the 27th.
That's on the 27th. Right? That's on a Wednesday. Yeah. That would suck. 2 days after.
Yeah, that'd be terrible because you got to travel either before Christmas and spend Christmas in a hotel, or travel the very next day after Christmas, which I would imagine would be the worst day to travel ever. And so, that one's. I mean, none of these are ideal because it's either the 26th. I mean, sorry, the 27th, the 28th, or the 29th.
Well, it's going to be interesting because you've got people in the chat saying, "Hey, I'm hearing it's the Holiday Bowl, and I'm hearing it's this," and the reality is we don't know who it's going to be, because if they knew, they would talk about it. But I mean, but that also shows that Notre Dame is still very much people want the brand.
Yeah,
they want the brand.
Of course they do.
And there's no doubt that that's basically what it comes down to. But there's just no way they can have USC again.
That would be horrible. I would not enjoy that in any way.
No, Notre Dame would with all due respect, Notre Dame would destroy us because Caleb Williams.
Yeah, because Caleb Williams isn't going to play. There's no chance he plays in that game. Zero.
No.
So you're going to be playing a Caleb Williams-less team.
Yeah.
And you beat the pants off of them with Caleb Williams. So that would be.
Well, and then what I don't know
to beat them again.
What I don't know, Vince, is I don't know if the Gator Bowl is an option again. I genuinely don't know because I hadn't seen. Because I coming in, everything I had read, there was nobody that had Notre Dame in the Gator in the last couple weeks, and I'm looking at what Brett McMurphy's was. He had the Gator Bowl LSU against NC State.
Okay.
Well, LSU's playing in.
We know they're going to ReliaQuest.
Right. And they had Pop-Tarts, Notre Dame, Kansas State, Holiday Bowl, Louisville, USC. Well, now Louisville's playing. Why would he have them in the Holiday Bowl? Okay. But he had USC called correctly. And then he had the Duke's Mayo Bowl, Kentucky, Clemson. Well, now we know Kentucky's in the Gator, right? So I'm seeing who did he have in the Gator Bowl? He had LSU, NC State, right? And so I mean, a lot of this stuff is already kind of jacked up.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I'm not criticizing for getting it wrong because, as I said, it's not as easy as just number 2 goes here, number 3 goes there. It's just not that easy anymore. There's a lot more negotiating that can happen now.
Correct.
And so, I mean, all his ACC predictions are basically wrong. And again, that's not a shot. He has the Georgia Florida State game correct, but it's ReliaQuest Bowl, he had Wisconsin, Tennessee. Citrus Bowl, he had Ole Miss, Iowa, right? That was wrong. He had Oklahoma playing in the Cotton Bowl, which why the heck would he have? Oh, okay, whatever. that one I'm going to make fun of. Sun Bowl, he has Miami, Oregon State. Now we do know that he was right about Oregon State. So he's gotten the opponent in those bowl games pretty much nailed. In somewhat Sun Bowl, he got right. Oregon State, Pop-Tarts Bowl with Kansas State. I believe that's a given. The Kansas State will be the Big 12 rep. It's just who's going to face them.
Okay.
And then he also got the Holiday Bowl correct with USC. Now it's just finding out about who the opponents are going to be.
The ACC needs to get this figured out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's part of the Notre Dame, the quote unquote Notre Dame problem is, but once they figure out who gets Notre Dame, as I said, it'll all
everything will fall into place at that point. But
and then we're going to find out here over the next week, Vince, who actually is going to play in the game.
Yes, and that honestly, that's really the biggest question mark going into the game from a Notre Dame standpoint, right? Is okay, who's going to play, who's not going to play, and then it's okay. Well, which young guys are we going to be able to get kind of a sneak peek at for the future of Notre Dame? I mean, because when you sit down and you look at 24, you look at year 3 of Marcus Freeman and all of the different storylines that are going to surround the 24 season, right? There's going to be a lot of guys on the field, especially on the defensive side of the ball, guys that Marcus Freeman recruited. Like a lot of quote unquote, right? His guys we're going to see. And I'm not saying this is a make or break season for Marcus Freeman, but we're going to start seeing his vision on the field, which gets me excited. I'm excited to see these young guys running around and doing some different things. And it's very obvious. And you've said this in your shows because I've listened to you say it. Notre Dame is building from the high school. They're building from the recruiting side of things, the bottom up, as they say, right? And so they're going to make room at the top for these guys coming up. Well, if that is going to be your strategy, which I wholeheartedly subscribe to.
That doesn't mean they're not going to hit the portal. But the
absolutely.
Portal is more targeted.
Right.
But let's get our 5.
If we're going to develop these kids, if that's the plan, if that's your overall game plan is develop these kids, get them on the field, etc., it's going to be exciting to see these kids get on the field and have a bigger role moving forward. And we're going to get, a little bit of a sneak peek with some of the guys that we think are probably going to opt out and guys that are going to take their spots.
Here's the thing for me, Vince. When I look at this bowl game and next season, I have a cautious excitement. It's almost a nervous excitement because it is a big year for Marcus Freeman. Is it a break or make season? No, it's not. Is it a really big year where even if they don't win at all, they've got to show steps as a program,
Absolutely.
not even just wins and losses, but some of the things we've talked about that have been kind of consistent, the lack of consistency, issues with the coaching staff, that there's friction between the coaches and the players. Last year was at a different position that's now gone. Now it's the receivers. It's like there's just a lot of things like that we're hearing. Somebody said on Twitter when I talked about culture, somebody said, you said the same thing last year. I'm like, yeah, I did. And in some ways it got fixed in some ways, but in other ways it didn't get fixed. Yeah. Those are things that you have to now start saying, like, whatever the results are, we can talk about, but those foundational things now need to start changing. And, these are guys that you recruited that you said, hey, this guy fits what we're trying to do. That's going to be the thing. And then if you don't see those things improve, if we're still having these same conversations next year, Vince, then that gets me a little bit nervous.
Sure. Those are red flag type of things, right?
Yeah. Where even if they maybe they're not quite the team we hope they are, for whatever reason, they're young, maybe they have a couple injuries or whatever the case may be, but we start to see some of those foundational things improve, then you can start saying they're going to be fine because we know the talent's going to get there. Right.
Yep. Absolutely.
And
we know there's talent on this roster, but it's going to be fun to see some of them get out there and do some different things.
But that's where my nervous excitement comes from, Vince, because the excitement part comes from what you just said. It's the talent.
Right.
And that's kind of my excitement from, for when you look at this bowl game is we know for a fact we're going to see some guys we haven't seen a whole lot of, or we're going to see some guys that are going to be featured more than maybe they have been, who we have seen. If Audric Estime doesn't play, again, I don't know. He hasn't announced his decision yet. This is just our opinion. If he doesn't play, then we're going to see Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price in a role that's going to be much more extensive than they've seen, which is going to give us a preview of what next year is going to look like. We're going to get a chance to see Jaden Greathouse pretty much be the guy. I mean, really, if you think about it, because, there's no Chris Tyree, you get Jaden Thomas and Deion Colsey, I think, are both going to play in the ball game. Again, that's my opinion. It means we're probably going to see a lot more Greathouse field, either the field outside in the slot, which are his two best positions. And look, they're going to go get a portal guy or two at receiver. Yeah. But I'll say this again, Notre Dame's production at receiver next year, yes, it's nice to go get that kind of guy, but it's still going to be determined by how good are the guys that are coming back. Does Deion Colsey stay healthy and put it all together? Can Jaden Thomas stay healthy and put it all together? Right. Can Jordan Faison continue to do what he did? But at the end of the day, I'm going to say this, the two guys that have the biggest impact in how good Notre Dame can be next year as a receiving core won't be the transfers. It'll be Jaden Greathouse and Cam Williams. Not that they have to be the guys, but they both have to be really good. Deion Colsey could be the guy. Jaden Thomas could be the guy as the volume guy. But those other two guys, to me, really need to be a part of it as well, Vince. That's going to be a big part of the receiving core. Well, guess what? We're going to get a chance to see some of those things. Brett McMurphy's teasing with me now, Vince. He just put a tweet out saying Kansas State will play an ACC team or Notre Dame in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. So I saw Kansas State, Notre Dame, and I'm thinking, hey, it's the Pop-Tarts Bowl, but it says Kansas State or Notre Dame in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. So
great.
Yeah.
So we're still in here waiting.
Yep.
Which is awesome. And yeah, I agree with you on the wider. I'm upset about the guys that are leaving Notre Dame from the wide receiver room. I'll be the first
yes
one. I'm upset
yeah.
about it. I mean, there's guys that I would have loved to see in a Notre Dame uniform next year. But end of discussion, right? Yeah. And I know there's other stuff that is going on behind the scenes and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, there are some guys that decided to transfer that I'm not happy about.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't mean that the sky is falling in that room either.
Well, look, I don't care to put a lipstick on that pig, at this point in time, because until we know who the new coach is, there's a lot of questions that have to get answered at wide receiver. Well, I'll just leave it at this. I'm bummed that guys left. I won't say that the sky isn't falling because I don't know that we can necessarily say that. To me, you can defend it, Vince. I just want to make my point here is I need to see them actually not be what they've been, because say, well, new coach is going to fix it. Well, we thought the new coach was going to fix what Del Alexander broke too, and he just made it worse.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
It's more about, I'm not worried at all about the talent at receiver next year. Even if they don't get a transfer, they'll still have Deion Colsey, they'll still have Jaden Thomas, they'll still have Jaden Greathouse, they'll still have Jordan Faison, they'll still have KK Smith,
Williams.
They'll still have Cam Williams, Micah Gilbert. The problem, however, is Deion Colsey's been injury prone, Jaden Thomas has been injury prone, and the rest of those guys are still unproven about whether or not they can be the guys.
Sure.
The talent won't be the problem. It's just about you got to go you got to go make the right hire. Right. You've got to go find a guy, and I believe I know who that's going to be.
Dropping bombs, dude.
But I don't think that search is going to take very long. And
but after the bowl game, you think that?
No, I think we'll know within the next week. Is when I think we'll know. Yeah,
gotcha.
But here's the thing: there's Notre Dame won't have just like this year. Notre Dame didn't have a talent problem receiver this year. Agreed. Right? If Tobias Merriweather had been developed correctly, if Deion Colsey would have been developed correctly and stayed healthy, if Jaden Thomas would have stayed healthy, this receiving core looks a lot different. If you had a receivers coach that didn't promote this guy over guys that were just better players, this receiving core would have been better. I think the talent is fine. You just got to coach it up and use it correctly. And those are questions we won't know answers to right now.
No.
And so
I don't think we're going to know answers to those questions until like midway through the next season. I mean, because you need to see it on the field, and we can hope to see certain things and practices that we get to see and all of that. But I would be shocked if we knew the answer to that, before about midway through the season.
Yeah. West Virginia will play an ACC team in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. That would actually be the one bowl I really want to play the least because I hate mayonnaise. Other than in tuna fish,
so they're not gonna make you eat it.
They douse the coach in it.
But you're not the coach, so you're okay.
I don't care. I still hate man. Even saying mayo makes me like,
oh
Yeah. What do you think? When I say Pop-Tarts, I'm like, ooh, Pop-Tarts. Brings me back to my coaching days when I probably ate Pop-Tarts more than any other meal.
That's
on
fair.
the planet. Pop-Tarts, Tang, and ramen noodles is probably something I've eaten more in my entire life when I was a poor football coach.
Right. I get that. Yeah. Believe me. I get that. My point was I'm not worried about the talent level in that room. That was more my point as opposed to the development and the coaching and all of that. I still like the talent that is in that room. And it's not devoid of talent. Okay.
Yeah.
And when you add these 3 guys that are, hopefully going to sign in a couple of weeks, right? Then I really feel good about the talent level. All the rest of the stuff is a big question mark, right? When you talk about who the coach is going to be, the development of that group, are they, what are their top ends going to look like? What are their releases are going to, all of those kinds of things. That's all a huge question mark.
Right.
What I'm saying is I like the talent that's there.
Yes.
And it's not devoid of that.
Right.
And so that's more.
I do think you need one portal guy to shore up your depth chart and to make sure.
I talked about that earlier today, right? I was excited.
You don't necessarily want to rely on 3 freshmen and 3 sophomores and 2 injury-prone veterans to carry your team for an entire season.
Right.
Because in a perfect world, if somebody just said that's the worst menu ever. I didn't eat them at the same time. I just had a lot of ramen noodles for lunch. I had a lot of Pop-Tarts for breakfast. Just want to make sure that we're on the same page.
I can see the spread. A little Tang, little Pop-Tarts, some ramen.
Tang and Yoo-Hoo,
crunch it all
just
up,
really cheap drinks.
Put it in
when
there.
You're a poor football coach making $3,000 a year. You got to make do, right?
Yeah.
But no, they weren't on the same menu. They were the main course of different meals. Okay. But look, if everybody stays healthy next year and it's just those 9 or those 8 or 9, they're going to be really good. I still contend if Deion Colzie gets an opportunity and can stay healthy, I think he could be a really good player. If Deion's willing to make the mental jump that Miles Boykin made his senior year.
Sure.
I mean, there's no reason Deion Colzie can't have a Miles Boykin breakout in 2024. No reason. There's no reason Jaden Greathouse can't do what he did last year and just with a little bit more volume there's no Michael Mayer, whatever the case may be.
Money, if he's in the right spot and he's allowed to enhance what his talents are, I think is the best way for me to put it. And he was hampered by injury too. I mean, he had that hamstring, and that is not great when you're a wide receiver and trying to be explosive and all of that too. So a lot going on there.
Yeah. Sure. So I want to answer this question real quick. Hi, IB, respectfully, when will Freeman get out of hiring fickle guys? It's obvious how predictable he is with his hires. It's just just stop, dude. Seriously, just stop. Because, I get so sick of this. This is the same. Brian Kelly only hires his friends. He should never just hire his friends. And I'm like, well, Mike Elston turned out to be a pretty darn good friend. Mike Denbrock was a pretty darn good friend who did a great job at Notre Dame, right? So just can we just chill? First of all, I'm not reporting who is the position coach right now. But can we just not do this? Can you just not? Zero about this coach that you're referring to. Nothing. And so you're just making an assumption because he's who else came from Luke Fickell's team? Mike Mickens. You know who Brian Kelly hired as his offensive coordinator of his offense at number 1 is the number 1 ranked offense in the country, and their quarterback as a Heisman Trophy candidate? Mike Denbrock. Where did Mike Denbrock come from? Luke Fickell. Can we just not be that group today? Charlie, can you just not be that guy today? Right? How about we just let it play out a little bit? Let's focus on the things that we're talking about right now. And don't just make assumptions that the coach isn't good because he happens to come from this coach over here or whatever the case may be. So, do some research on whatever coach that we're talking about before you just assume that he is or isn't because he came from a tree. Some of Luke Fickell's assistant coaches, who else came from Luke Fickell? Marcus Freeman.
I was waiting for that one. I was gonna put that one out there.
So, can we just not do that? Right? Let's just not do that. And that's what I would really love for us not to do today. And then we'll evaluate it and we'll look at some other types of things and we'll figure out who they're going to be. Because look, one thing we can all agree on, Notre Dame's got to be a lot better on offense next year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we shall see. So Vince, I don't know that we're going to be able to extend this show long enough to know who the Notre Dame opponents
and it's ridiculous.
Brett McMurphy just tweeted the ACC still hasn't held conference call with bowl partners. Sources told Action Network. Teams available: Notre Dame, NC State, Louisville, Clemson, North Carolina, Miami, Virginia Tech. Bowls with openings: Pop-Tarts, Gator, Holiday, Dukes, Mayos, Pinstripe, Southern. So they're not even in negotiations yet with this. I mean, is this really what we're doing?
If that's where we're at, then
yeah. So
that kind of does it then, because
I
mean, this isn't super enticing thing to watch if we don't have anything to actually talk about.
Yeah.
So I mean,
we'll just kind of wrap up Vince here, and maybe it comes out while we're sitting here. But knowing our luck, we'll end the show.
Yeah, I know.
And they'll literally release 2 minutes later, and I'm 100%. Just going to be just screw it. But again, I mean, I'm a little concerned about it because you look and say Notre Dame's going to have. I think they're going to have a lot of guys not playing. I mean, we know some already. They're not going to have Chris Tyree. They're not going to have Tobias Merriweather. They're not going to have Rico Flores. They're not going to have Holden Stace. They're not going to have Nano Safa-Mensah. We know they're not going to have those guys.
And Henderson.
Ramon Henderson. Okay. Yeah. I think I can live with that one.
Well, he's just one of them. Yeah.
Right. I'm more concerned about safety next year when DJ Brown is also gone than I am about not having him. I mean, look, get Don Schuler ready to go. That's the way I look at it. But there's going to be a lot of guys not playing, and there's going to be some more that aren't going to sit out because they're transferring. They're going to sit out because they're going to the NFL.
Right.
It's just going to happen.
Yep.
And so, but we don't know who the opponent is not going to have. I'm really worried about Kansas State. Well, I mean, I get that. Kansas State's a good football team. I'm pretty sure their starting quarterback's not going to play in their bowl game either. He's in the transfer portal right now.
No, if he's in the portal, he's not playing.
So they're gonna turn to Avery Johnson in the bowl game, who is a true freshman, a talented true freshman. Don't get me wrong, but still a true freshman.
Yeah.
So both teams
both sides.
And I don't know how many other guys for K-State are going to jump in the portal. I have no idea. So there's going to be a lot to that. Somebody just said I want Notre Dame to play LSU. That's not happening. LSU already has their bowl opponent, and
clearly
it's
not going to happen. Right.
So that's that's kind of my takeaway. Vince. But this is an important bowl game for Notre Dame, and it has nothing to do with the opponent.
I got to say, as much as I wanted to go to the ReliaQuest Bowl, I'm glad Notre Dame's not playing LSU. I'll just say it. I'll just say it.
Well, I'm back and forth, Vince. Yeah. I'm back and forth. I mean, there's the obvious reasons why I want that game.
For sure.
I want
that too.
But at the same time, it's like you're not going to have half your starting lineup. They're not going to have half their starting lineup.
Yep.
And then and if you lose, the LSU fans are going to be nonstop. And if you win, you can't get any joy out of it because they'll just be like, so what? We didn't have so-and-so, so-and-so.
100%.
Just like South Carolina last year.
It's lose-lose. Right. And honestly, it's lose-lose for both teams.
I tend to agree.
And if you are on either side of the fence on this particular battle, right? If you're an LSU fan or you're a Notre Dame fan, it's lose-lose in my opinion. And so, I get why they probably don't want to play each other from a program standpoint, taking the fans out of it and the media and all of that. I get why they don't want to play. I get it, man. Good luck spinning losing to Brian Kelly, or good luck spinning if you're Brian Kelly losing to Marcus Freeman.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'm glad you said it that way. But again, it's like you're not going to get the same boost out of it because they're going to say, well, Jay Daniels didn't play, Malik Neighbors didn't play, and then just like last year, I had to hear all offseason, well, they didn't have so-and-so and so-and-so for South Carolina. I'm like, and we're just going to ignore the fact Notre Dame didn't have Cam Hart, Michael Mayer, and Isaiah Foskey in that game. Like, that was meaningless.
Right.
If those three guys didn't play in the game, are we just going to pretend that, the guy who'd been your starting quarterback all year didn't play in the game? Drew Pine didn't play in the game? I mean, are we just going to ignore all that and just act like South Carolina is the only team that had guys out? And that's what it'll be again. Well, we didn't have so-and-so. I mean, Notre Dame could literally start. They could go into that game with no Joe Alt, no Blake Fisher, no Sam Hartman, no Audric Estime, no Rico Flores, no Tobias Merriweather, no Chris Tyree, none of their linebackers, no Cam Hart, no Javonte Jean-Baptiste, no and win by 10, and they'd still say, but we didn't have three guys in the game. You know what I mean? Like, I'm using a hyperbolic example, like everyone I could even think of not playing in this game, not playing, and they win and say, but we didn't have these three guys. That's exactly how it would go.
No, so there is a realistic I won't say realistic. There's a chance. Like you just named off a bunch of guys, right? And I'm just going off of that list. So you just named guys that might or might not, right? That they're only starting one guy who started the season on offense, and that's left guard Pat Coogan.
Well,
is that right?
No, because you'd still have Jaden Thomas, who started the first game.
Okay.
So you'd have two, at least two. I mean, worst case scenario, you'd have at least two because Jaden will be healthy.
So I was one off.
Yeah, but you'd still have another guy that started multiple games in Jaden Greathouse.
Okay.
So at best,
I'm saying
it doesn't change your point, Vince. It doesn't change your point.
Right.
I'm just trying to be correct in the exact.
No, I appreciate that because I was doing it quickly in my head.
Now we're not saying they're gonna. But Vince is saying that's worst case scenario.
Correct.
And what you also mean by that is Rocco Spindler's hurt, Mitchell Evans is hurt.
Exactly.
Right. So those are two there.
Zeke
Carell's already not coming back. Right. Chris Tyree's already announced. Tobias, whether it was Tobias or Rico, both of those guys were starters at the Z
and they're in
position.
The portal.
So you're not going to have them. You know you're not going to have them. You know you're not going to have Chris Tyree. You know you're not going to have, Rocco Spindler. You know you're not going to have Zeke Carell. So that's, you're not going to have Mitchell Evans. That's five right there already we know are not playing.
Correct.
So
and then you get what potential opt-outs.
We don't know if Joe Walton, Blake Fisher are not going to play. We don't know if Audrick's going to play. We don't know if Sam Hartman's not going to play. What we're saying is the reality is some of those guys aren't going to play.
Right.
That's a fact. Now, do we know how many? No, I don't. But that's what you have to kind of prepare.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Worst case scenario is you're looking at a completely different offense than what lined up in Ireland.
Yeah.
Personnel wise.
Dude, you're looking at a completely different offense from what lined up against Stanford.
Which is the most recent game. Yes, correct.
Because, let's say Audrick doesn't play. Okay, there's 200-some rushing yards and 25 carries right there.
Yeah.
Let's say Sam Hartman doesn't. Okay, there's your starting quarterback. Rico Flores had a 100-yard game 2 games ago.
Sure.
He was a starter. Chris Tyree, was a big play guy for you. He's out. Tobias Merriweather had a long touchdown against Pitt. So, I mean, just the last 2 weeks, your offense is going to look a lot different. Now, the good news is that we have seen a couple games of them playing the Schrouth, Coogan, and Craig interior, which is good.
Yes, absolutely.
Right, which is good.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yep. So it's going to be interesting, and like I said, this game is going to be a lot about Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a lot about Notre Dame. We're going to answer some questions here, Vince.
Okay.
We have some super chats coming up before we go. We'll try to. I mean, guys, we would love to be able to talk about this game, but as you can see. This announcement was supposed to be done an hour ago.
Yeah.
I mean, over an hour ago.
More than an hour ago,
This is just an absolute train wreck right now with the ACC. It's like they're just still not getting over Florida State not being in, apparently. And it must have just messed everything up right now because this is just absolute nonsense right now. That his I'm going to see if he's given an updated tweet here. Let me just check to see if McMurphy has because his last tweet was just – the ACC,
the one about the conference calls.
The ACC still hasn't held conference calls with bowl partners. So it's like, what are you guys doing here?
Right.
What are we doing here? So let's get to some super chats, Vince, and we'll start off here in a second. But hey, do us a favor, folks. Before we get to the super chats, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, give us a 5-star review, and I promise if they announce it during the mailbag, we will come back to it and break it all down. So let's do a couple of these super chats before we get out of here.
Charlie Weiss's last belt loot. Thanks, man. He goes, I wasn't trying to be that guy. I just wish Notre Dame would get a jaw-dropping, explosive hire. Think outside the box, not just safe hires.
But you're doing it again.
Work.
It's not a safe if look, here's the deal. There's no hire that's guaranteed to work. There's no hire you can make that's that's going to be a slam dunk hire.
True.
I mean, I remember when Notre Dame fans lost it and how excited they were when John Tenuta was hired. And I was like, I'm not. Because he's top 25 defense, and then it was easy for me to. But that was a big name hire. We've seen big name hires come to Notre Dame before and not do well. We've seen guys you've never heard of. How many of you, when Mike Mickens was hired, was like, oh my God, this guy is going to have Notre Dame is going to have the best cornerback in the country in 3-4 years because when Mike Mickens got hired. Raise your hand if you said that. Okay, good. No one hands are raised. I didn't think so. Right? I mean, I remember when Harry Hiestand got hired. there's a lot of upset fans because this guy got fired from Tennessee. They didn't want him. This is a terrible hire. This 100%. Is a home run hire. And Dell Alexander was considered a really good hire. I thought it was a really good hire when Dell got hired because he had a really good reputation.
Yeah.
At different Wisconsin and Arizona State, a really good reputation. Turned out to be a bad hire. So the very thing you're frustrated about means it's the opposite of a safe hire. If you're mad because he's not jaw-dropping or explosive, then that's not safe. Is to go out there and get the jaw-dropping explosive hire. You got Brian Hartline. That's a safe hire. That's a safe hire because of his track record. It's not a safe hire to hire someone that a lot of people don't know about.
Sure.
That's not a safe hire. It's the exact opposite of a safe hire. Let's be honest.
The vast majority of Notre Dame fans would only be happy if they hired Hartline, who would have to take a demotion to come to Notre Dame.
And I'm not sharing my opinion on who I think the new coach is going to be or what my thoughts are of him. What my thing is like, you're not doing any research on, you haven't watched broken down his film. You haven't done any of those things. You're just mad because he's not a name.
Right, exactly.
And the reality is Mike Mickens wasn't a name either. Mike Mickens was like 4 years removed from being at Bowling Green when Notre Dame hired him. It was a home run hire. Home run hire.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, I just you guys are looking for to me for the wrong things. And again, this isn't saying that you're not going to be right, that he's going to be a bad coach. I'm not saying you're wrong. What I'm saying is when you're just looking at where he came from without any other context, you're missing the boat of what this conversation needs to be about. And so that's my frustration, Charlie, is that right there, man. I love you and everything, but you do this all the time and just spend 30 minutes watching film, do some research. I mean, I reached out to some friends I know in the coaching business who know this guy, who worked with this guy that I expect it to be. NC State and Kansas State in the Pop-Tarts Bowl.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. So Notre Dame will not be in the Pop-Tarts Bowl.
That kind of shocks me.
So, okay, so now we're getting – yes, me too. So now it's either Gator again or the Sun Bowl
or the Holiday Bowl against USC.
So I got to think it can't be
Come
that,
on.
right? It can't be that. It can't be that, right?
And do you really think they'd go to the Gator Bowl 2 years in a row?
If you're Notre Dame, I mean, I think the Gator Bowl is one of the ones available. I think the Gator Bowl is one of the most higher paid ones, I believe.
Oh, okay. Well, I was gonna say it's got more name recognition, obviously. Than the other ones. I give you. that.
I mean, I'm going to look it up right now. The payout for the Gator Bowl is $5.3 million, and let me see here. Payout for the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Let me see what that is. That looks like it's about the same. That's like $6 million. So it's close. Let me see what the payout for the Sun Bowl is. These are always interesting. This one is a lot less. 1.9 million. So that would be be bad. So I'm kind of looking at some of these.
Notre Dame, do they share bowl revenue with the ACC?
Yes, I believe so. Since they get the ACC's tie-ins, they get. Okay. I do think they get something from it.
I figured.
I'm just not sure exactly what exactly
the percentage is and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the Sun Bowl. Let's see if that one's correct. Sun Bowl. Let me see here. Is it not called the Sun Bowl anymore?
I thought it was.
That's what I thought too, but it's not showing the payout on this one. All right, let's check out the Holiday Bowl, see what that is. There's no way that they're going to have a rematch against USC, right? Holiday Bowl, $6.5 million. That's wild.
Go to California.
Really wild.
Look USC.
Yeah. What is wrong with the Gator Bowl? What are they thinking? So, yeah, that's wild. That's absolutely wild. Yeah. That's a wild one.
So somebody said the Gator is Clemson and Kentucky announced on their Twitter account.
So wow. That's wild.
So now you're talking Sun Bowl or Holiday Bowl.
Pop-Tarts hasn't officially announced it. So Gator Bowl. So see, Gator Bowl has announced it.
The Holiday Bowl is up to the.
So Gator Bowl just announced it's Clemson and Kentucky.
Okay.
And then did the Holiday Bowl just announce?
They're at the podium. I see people. So that's something I don't have the volume
So
on.
that's going to be very interesting. Very interesting. Louisville will play USC in the Holiday Bowl. So are they going to seriously send Notre Dame to the freaking Sun Bowl?
With the lowest payout? How did that go down?
Are they seriously about to do that? Are they seriously about to do that? That's going to be wild. The Mayo Bowl? There's no way. What's the payout for the Mayo Bowl? Let me see what the Mayo Bowl is here.
The Sun Bowl?
Yeah. Hold on. Let me just see here. The Mayo Bowl's 4.7. So that's ACC versus Big Ten. I'm going to play a Big Ten team. So yeah, this is going to be very interesting. Now, this is going to be one of those things where first I want to see who the opponent is. See who the opponent is and what the bowl is first. But I'm really curious what bowl they send Notre Dame to, because this could be one of those final straw moments if you're Notre Dame, where you're kind of like, okay, this how you want to play. You know, who's on the other line? Hold on, Jim Phillips. I got somebody on the other line. Oh, it's the Big Ten. Let me call you back. You know what I mean? Like, man. Yeah, that is wild.
Did not see the Sun Bowl coming.
No. So none of the bowls that people projected Notre Dame to be in last night.
Maybe the fringe crowd was right. Maybe Notre Dame just said, you know what, we're out. We're not going bowling this year.
Yeah. I really don't think that's the case.
I know. I'm joking more than anything else, but gosh.
So is it really going to be the Sun Bowl? Is that really what we're doing here? I mean,
the Sun Bowl is the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl, by the way.
Right.
And
they have like Frosted Flakes.
They have not announced anything.
Okay.
I just see a bunch of posts with Tony the Tiger posing with people.
Yeah, I see that too. So it's what, Sun Bowl, Mayo Bowl? Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. That would be very, very interesting.
The Sun Bowl?
Very interesting. Man, I really hope it's not the Duke's Mayo Bowl. That's, first of all, it's in freaking North Carolina. Although the Duke's
say Mayo Bowl.
Here's the thing: the Duke's Mayo Bowl does have one of the bigger payouts.
Okay.
So, I mean, I guess there's something to that. I mean, their Twitter page is just a bunch of people eating mayo. I just want to throw up. Like, look, I'm not gonna lie. Like, there are things I eat that have mayo in it, but I just, like, Angela will make tuna fish and she'll put mayo in it. It's like, first of all, just don't overdo it because I don't want to taste it. But then just don't tell me about it.
Oh, so 8 minutes ago they put mayo on a piece of cheesecake.
Yes.
Like, I like mayo, but let's not get ridiculous here, okay?
Yeah.
Like, let's not overdo it.
Yeah. Yeah, this is going to be interesting. So we are so let's just keep answering some super chats Vince, while we wait for this this absurd release to come.
This is hurting my head.
To come down. Yeah. This is from Jimmy Page.
Oh, sorry. Jimmy Page, thanks for the super chat. FSU got hosed, but we got hosed in 93. So he's not wrong. On either account, in my opinion.
Yeah.
On either account.
I mean, that's kind of something I said, Vince. I was like, look, I just like the Notre Dame fan in me is kind of like, you know what? It's a little bit of payback, but Notre Dame doesn't all of a sudden now have an extra national championship because Florida State got screwed. You know, but at the same time, like, these kids didn't have anything to do with that. But the fan in me is like, haha, that's what you get. The other part of me is kind of like, I still feel like those kids got screwed.
I completely agree.
But I'm not overly fond of the Florida State fan base, to be completely honest with you.
Fair.
They're not one of my favorite fan bases. I've had very little interaction with them, and it just hasn't been overly pleasant. But but the kids earned it, in my opinion, and they didn't get it. But yeah, I'm with you, man. But that was kind of my reaction. Like, now y'all know how it feels, you know, to earn something on the field and have people that aren't on the field, aren't playing, to decide, despite what happened on the field, you're not going to have a chance to play for a championship. We're not going to get the championship. So, you know, welcome into the crowd.
That's great. I love it. I just, you know, again, I think I said it earlier, and I've got to stick by, you know, what I said before is I don't honestly care from a Notre Dame perspective, and from I don't care what bowl they end up going to. Like, as far as they just need a 10th win, and to get that 10th win, that's what's most important to me. Now, I'm thinking about it from a selfish standpoint and talking about the bowl and the opponent and all of those different things for the next 3 weeks, potentially going wherever it's going to be. But at the same time, I just want them to get their 10th win. I don't care who it's against.
At the end of the day, Vince, that is absolutely,
yes.
that's absolutely correct.
This is nonsense, everything that we're going through to try to figure out where Notre Dame is going to go. It's ridiculous that it takes this long. But when all the dust settles, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I just want them to win.
Right.
I got to get that 10th W. So
that's the key. I don't care if it's in the Sun Bowl where they because they've played in that bowl before. That was Brian Kelly's first bowl game.
Oh, I remember.
They smacked Miami.
Remember it snowed Miami, and they had no way to deal with snow down there.
Yeah.
And so the Miami guys came out and all bundled up and everything. And that game was over before it started.
Notre Dame players are out there with like short sleeve shirts. Like Michael Floyd came out with like a tight shirt to like stop, like no sleeves, and the Miami kids are just like bundled up, and you're like, they got no chance in this game.
That game was,
and that game wasn't even like, it was 33-17 win, but it wasn't that close. It was 30-3 when Notre Dame started pulling guys, and they scored a couple times late. Like that was an absolute butt kicking.
Yes,
an absolute butt kicking.
And like I said, it was over before it started. My father-in-law was there, and he's like, "These guys don't want to be here." Talking about Miami.
No, they wanted no part of that. And you know, they were kind of. I mean, and also too, Vince. I mean, it was kind of a weird situation because they had fired their coach. Because if you remember, if you go back and watch that game, do you remember who they interviewed in the middle of the game?
No,
Al Golden.
Really?
Because he had just been hired as Miami's new head coach.
Oh my gosh!
They had fired. Was it Randy Shannon? And then Jeff Soutland was the interim coach for the game, but they had hired Al Golden. So if you go watch that game, it was on CBS. They brought in Al Golden to interview about taking over at Miami at that time. So very interesting.
Full circle.
Very, very interesting.
Potentially.
Yeah. Yep.
I would be, I guess at this point, if it's down to the Sun Bowl and the Mayo Bowl, and you start talking about money and you start talking about that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
To me, it has to be the Mayo Bowl at that point because the payout is like 3 times.
Yeah, if they get the Sun Bowl, that would be I just kind of feel like unless there's more to it than we know, I got to think that that's something Notre Dame's not super happy about. You know, so I mean, so what was it? They were arguing over who wasn't going to get Notre Dame.
Yeah, seriously.
You know what I mean? Like, is that what we're doing here? So this is very interesting.
Louisville has put out a bunch of crap about going to play USC in the Holiday Bowl,
which so honestly is a bowl game I'm kind of looking forward to be completely honest with you. Like, I'm that'll be an interesting bowl game. Take the Notre Dame side of it apart. I mean, out of it, that's going to be an interesting bowl game. And I would love to see Louisville smack USC.
I mean, look, USC is going to have a ton of opt-outs as well. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be like a shell of themselves. But when they were full go, they weren't a great program and a great football team. So they're not going to put up much of a fight, I wouldn't think. And
if you're going
to give Jeff Brom a month to figure out how to
now.
Come on.
What's going to be interesting is USC did hire the defensive coordinator from UCLA, who did a nice job. Okay. So at least they won't have Alex Grinch, and so there's that advantage of. But they're just going to watch USC film,
right?
Or UCLA film, excuse me. But yeah, I don't want a ticked off Jeff Brom having a month to prepare. Although
this is what I'm saying.
They had to have some rough bowl games at Purdue, but that's because they usually overachieved as a team and got stuck against LSU last year. Like that was so unfair. Even though he didn't coach, I don't believe he coached in that game. I could be wrong, but I don't believe he coached in that game. But yeah, we'll kind of see how it plays out. But yeah, this is interesting. But like you said, they've got to win, right? And I believe the Duke Males Bowl, I believe, is going to be against West Virginia.
Oh,
I'm going to look that up and see if that's accurate, because that would be interesting, because that's where Jared Parker came from. And I don't believe there was necessarily, it's going to be West Virginia. There wasn't necessarily the greatest relationship there when he left. There was some frustration on his end. I'm told by some people at the time, from some West Virginia people, that there was some frustration that the offense struggled. The head coach was primarily in charge of the offense. He wanted to go in one direction. Parker wanted to take it in another. Since he's not the head coach, he lost that one. And then the offense struggled. And then he's the one that gets blamed for it because he's the offensive coordinator, basically.
Yeah. Right.
So, yeah, that'll be an interesting one. Very, very interesting one.
I don't know, man. I just and they've announced all the other ACC.
Somebody just said the Tang Bowl. there used to be a Tangerine Bowl. It's a little bit different. So it'll be Oregon State or looks like Oregon State or West Virginia.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm annoyed by this whole process at this point. They've announced all the other ACC.
Yeah, somebody just said that the payout for the Sun Bowl last year was $4.9 million. So, but yeah, I don't. And what does you say? It's the Tony the Tiger.
It's the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl.
Okay, so it was $4.5 million. Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess it was just called the Tony the Tiger Bowl. It was $4.5 million.
Their Twitter account says Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. So
so it looks like that's 4.5. So
so maybe that's not as bad as I thought.
Yes, we were incorrect on that because the thing I looked up said 1 point something million, but it looks like that might just be like the each school's cut or something with the conference. I don't know, but it says here that the Mayo Bowl is 4.78 million. This is last year, and that the Sun Bowl, which is the Tony the Tiger Bowl, is 4.55. So it's not that much of a difference.
Okay.
The Gator Bowl is 5.3. So yeah, it's a little bit different.
I mean, that's a big difference to people like you and me. It's not a big difference to
ReliaQuest Bowl is 6.4. Citrus Bowl was 8.2. So yeah, it's very interesting.
What is it when you make a New Year's 6? Do you know off the top of your head?
It's it's just depends on if it's a playoff game. Like I would imagine so. I mean, like Peach Bowl, CFB revenue pool is what it says. CFB revenue pool. Since they're semifinals, I imagine. Sugar Bowl, contract bowl. I don't know what that means, so I'd have to go look that up. But very interesting stuff, Vince. Very interesting stuff.
I know at this point, so it's either North Carolina or El Paso.
Correct. Now North Carolina would be nice because I'd probably go see when is that bowl game played. When is
we haven't looked at that, have we?
Mayo Bowl. Is it the 27th? So what would probably happen is I just spend Christmas with my family in Virginia and then just drive down to Charlotte. So I shouldn't say that because then my mom's going to start getting ideas, and then if I can't go, she's going to be upset.
Yep. Gotta be careful.
Yeah.
Don't
like, could they get? I mean, we're thinking this is the options, but like, it's going to be wild, man. It's going to be wild.
Neither one is announced. So
let's get to some more questions, Vince. We were like, there's no way this is going to be a 2-hour show. We were like, we'll be in there hour and out. That's what
Here we are. Hugh Murtha, thanks for the super chat. Can you discuss how Notre Dame can prepare for a defense that will no doubt blitz and stack the box with only 2 wide receivers in the bowl game? There's more than 2 wide receivers.
I honestly don't know how that will be. And here's the thing. We won't have to find that out because Notre Dame doesn't have 2 wide receivers. So I don't know what team you're referring to, Hugh. I do appreciate the super chat, but I'm not quite sure what you're referring to. Here's the other thing. No team is going to blitz like that when the other team has no pass game weapons, because that's dangerous, because now you're the more you blitz, the more you're risking that they can crease a play. If you're worried about this bad teams, and what you do is you play an 8-man box, you be disciplined, you be tight towards the box, and then you're going to play man coverage, but you're not going to just blitz all the time. They'll stack the box, but they're not going to blitz all the time. But the reality is they had Deion Colsey, who played in last year's bowl game, Jaden Thomas, who was one of the best players in last year's bowl game. You're going to have Matt Salerno, who played in last year's bowl game, and you're going to be probably better at tight end this year than you were last year, because, Eli Raridan and Mitchell Evans last year, kind of a wash, both injured, missed half a year, didn't have a ton of production, but you knew the talent was good. But it's freshman Holden Stace against freshman Cooper Flanagan. Well, this year's freshman Cooper Flanagan brings a lot more value to what that number 2 tight end needs to be as a blocker than what Holden Stace did last year. And then you have Davis Sherwood, who, if you remember, completed a 20-yard pass in last year's bowl game. Remember the little flick to Braden Lindsay on the fake punt? He's the other guy. I mean, so that's it is what it is.
Right.
So that's how do you prepare? You get blitz beaters. That's what you do. You create blitz beaters. You find a way. I mean, in all seriousness, if a team's going to do that, and look, that's not new. Teams have been doing that to Notre Dame for a while. We're going to make you beat us with your receivers. That's not going to change. They've got plenty of practice of that. Sure. Use formations and motions to gain leverages. Do different things to create levels concepts in the pass game, just like you did in the last couple games. You've got to do a better job teaching guys how to win off the line against teams that are going to blitz a whole lot. Use numbers to gain, we said to get leverage advantages, use motions and shifts to get leverage advantages. And in seriousness, there are certainly things you can do to be prepared for that, because honestly, teams are going to say, we're going to make you beat us running the football. And we're going to take your offensive line that looks a lot different. We're going to make you protect us. So, yeah, Notre Dame, he's being a bit funny here, but there's also merit to Hugh's question in that they are going to face a loaded box. They're going to face a team that's going to throw stuff at you.
It's the way I would attack Notre Dame. 100%. And right. Let's say, because we talked about this already, right? So let's say Notre Dame loses both tackles on their quarterback. Why would you not load the box? And they've got inconsistency at wide receiver and an interim wide receiver coach, right? So even Jared Parker's coaching the wide receivers, but you know what I'm saying. So my strategy as a defensive coordinator would be, hey, we got to stop the run. That's what you got to do. Now, like you said, you got to play sound defense, and you got to cover, and you got to do all those different things. But yeah, number one priority, stop the run game, because I've seen how explosive Love can be, and I've seen how explosive all the other backs can be in this offense. They still got those guys, and so I'm loading the box potentially at times. I'm blitzing at times. I'm going to be exotic with my blitzes, but yeah, it's stop the run, number one. Yeah. Period.
And that's what they should do.
Yes,
they should do. And then it's going to be up to Notre Dame. Right. It's going to be up to Notre Dame to say, hey, we were going to have answers for it.
Right.
And figure out what those answers are. It's going to be very fascinating. Yep. Man, they better not go to the freaking Pinstripe Bowl. Somebody told me that might be an option too. I'm going to be.
Somebody else said the Military Bowl is an ACC bowl.
I think but I don't see that being. Let's see what some of these payouts are. Let's see what the Pinstripe. Let's see here. What's the Pinstripe Bowl? That's 4.4 million. So I mean, it's similar. It's not a whole lot of difference. And then what's the Military Bowl? That's 2 million. No, that's no way they're playing it. No, that's ACC versus American. There's no way they send them to the Military.
It's Tulane. Tulane's in that bowl.
Okay, so that's the American team. Notre Dame would be the representative of the ACC team.
Right.
So
that's what I'm saying. So that's not a possibility. The money's too low.
Well, it's a possibility because Notre Dame would be the ACC team against the American team, which is too
right. No. That's what I'm saying. But the payout is so low, I would be shocked if that was the case. That's all I mean.
Yeah, that would be wild. Be very wild. There's no way. It can't be. But of course, as soon as I say that, the way that this
that's
season,
where they're going to go, baby.
That's exactly where they're going to go.
Yeah,
New York City right now. New York City. Yeah, that's just no, thank you. And then both of these, these three bowl games we're looking at, they have the lamest Twitter accounts. So all the cool Twitter accounts Notre Dame's not going to. Not that that has anything to do with it, but at least it keeps me entertained.
It's fun. It's fun for us. It's fun for us.
Yeah. Here we go.
Ryan Elliott, thanks for the super chat. Bama is going to smack Michigan, and I'm here for it. Man, I hope you're right, Ryan. That would make whatever day that game is a great day in our house, my house.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I necessarily want them to smack them.
Well, I like a good game,
yeah,
but at the same time, I wouldn't mind if
I wouldn't be upset about it.
Yeah, I would not.
Yeah, I wouldn't be upset about it. It could certainly happen, Ryan. Bama could certainly smack Michigan. I just don't know that Michigan is that kind of team. They're a really quality team, and I don't think this is a great Bama team. I mean, this is one of the best coaching jobs Nick Saban's ever done. I mean, he did a great coaching job. This is not a vintage Bama team. It's not. And yeah, they looked like it against Georgia, but they didn't look like it in a lot of games this year. You know, so yeah, we'll see. But I don't think it will be a smack, but it's certainly possible. I just think it'd be a much more competitive game. If we're actually talking about what I think will happen, then I think that's going to be the case. A super chat from Florida Irish. Thank you very, very, very much. Let's go to this next one from AST 12321.
Thanks for the super chat. Does Florida State precedent help or hurt Notre Dame, or is it utterly irrelevant given the 12-team playoff? Well, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. I just want to answer real quick. So to me, it's irrelevant because Florida State got left out of a 14 playoff and they were undefeated and they were a conference champion, right? Number one, Notre Dame will never be a conference champion pending another pandemic, right? So that part is irrelevant. an undefeated Notre Dame team will never, ever, ever, ever get left out of a 12-team playoff. Ever. So, and with the way that the 12-team playoff is set up right now, they can't get higher than 5th anyway. And so I don't think it has anything to do with Notre Dame in the future. Now, if it was going to continue to be a 4-team playoff, maybe, but not if it's expanding.
I think the thing that people have to look at too is we're not talking about a 13-0 normal Florida State team is left out.
That's also true.
If Jordan Travis is not injured, or, and I hate that the kid had to say this, but he was spot on. If he would have got hurt sooner, if he'd have got hurt months sooner and they went out and won some, more games with the backup, then the kid shouldn't have to say that, but he's also correct. So if Notre Dame is in a situation where they are in that 10-12 battle and their starting quarterback gets hurt, yes, they won't make the playoff based on this precedent. Right? I mean, or potentially could not make the playoff based on this precedent. But with the 12-team playoff, to your point, if we're talking about, who should be 3, who should be 4, who should be 5, the thing that you're pissed, Florida State, if this is next year, Florida State's pissed that they have to play a first-round game. We should have got a bye. We deserved a bye. But they still have a chance to play for a championship. The only way it would impact Notre Dame is if we're talking about, okay, should they be in that 11 or 12 spot, which means that's not a great football team. That's not a great Notre Dame football team.
Right. Absolutely.
So, but if that not very great football team has their starting quarterback go hurt in the second last game of the year and they don't look very good in those final 2 games, sure. Offensively, then sure, it could precedent. But it doesn't hurt Notre Dame just in general because people are like, well, this is no respect for the ACC. That's partly true. But again, if Jordan Travis isn't hurt, this isn't a conversation. The conversation is, how could you put Bama in over Texas? That's what would have happened today. Because you and I both know if Jordan Travis isn't hurt, the playoff should have been 1 Michigan. Well, I mean,
right,
not seeding. The top 3 seeds are Michigan, Washington, and Florida State. No brainer.
Correct.
Now it comes down to who's going to be in, Texas or Bama. You and I both know there was no way the committee was going to leave the SEC champ out,
which is
even with the
terrible.
Head-to-head.
But yes.
Now, again, that's my opinion. So that would be what we would all be blowing up about today is Texas versus Alabama. If Jordan Travis doesn't get hurt, so if you want to say does the precedent, if Notre Dame's starting quarterback is as dynamic as Jordan Travis and he gets hurt 2 games before the playoffs are selected, yes, that could hurt Notre Dame in that precedent in a 12-team playoff if they're 1 to 10-12. But if Notre Dame's like battling for 4 and 5 and there's questions about the quarterback, then it drops them down to like 8-9. It doesn't take them from 4-5 to out because the guy is not playing.
Right. It will. Yeah. What it would do is it would take them down low enough where they are no longer hosting the first round game, which could be significant depending on who it is or whatever. So that would be the conversation I think that you would have. It's not whether they would be in or out. You know what I mean? And so that would be the biggest thing for me, I guess. So, let me ask you this, and I know this is way off base or whatever. So let's say Michael Penix gets injured, same time as Jordan Travis, but they go and they're still undefeated. Do they get the same treatment that Florida State got?
No, because I think their overall resume would have been more respect. Like Florida State's been getting kind of disrespected this whole year. I mean, remember they were like in 4 and 5 and they were below Michigan, even though they had wins over Clemson and wins over LSU by 21. They still had Michigan ahead of them based on what? Right? Like this is the problem. Georgia and Georgia, I don't mind because you know my stance on you're the champion, so somebody beat you. But there was never a justification to have Michigan as high as they were. Michigan should never have been higher than 4 until they played Ohio State in Penn State and Ohio State at the end of the year. And so to me, like Florida State's been kind of getting kicked all year because there's too much of assumptions about what leagues are based on the past and not enough about, well, what have these leagues done this year? So if Michael Penix gets hurt and they go out in their last 2 games of the regular season, so he would have meant he got hurt against Oregon State. They go out and beat Washington State in the Apple Cup and then go out and beat number 6 Oregon as a big underdog. That's a different story because there's no respect for the ACC opponent that they played. There would have been respect for, they were a 10-point dog with Michael Penix playing. they'd have been a 17 to 20 point dog without
big
Michael
time.
Penix playing. And if they would have gone out and won that game by whatever score, they would have looked at that, because that's number 6 Oregon as opposed to number 15 Louisville, who just lost to Kentucky, who's 7-5 or 6-6 or whatever, 7-5.
Right.
So it would have been a little bit different, and the overall resume would have been stronger. That's all I mean, so no, I don't think it would have been the same if Michael Penix got hurt, but it certainly would have been a conversation. Certainly would have been a conversation. Because now you're like, well, you know that Florida State's in if the roles were reversed and Florida State doesn't have an injury. You know Michigan's in, and so you'd say, okay, well, now who's 3 and 4 and 5? So Texas is probably still in. So now we're talking about Washington or Bama. I mean, so I think we'd be having a similar conversation, but I just think Washington's resume would have been considered a lot stronger in that type of situation.
And so would you say the same thing if the same thing happened to Michigan and JJ McCarthy goes down, but they still beat Ohio State?
No. They would be looked at completely differently, because they would say, dude, you went on the road and beat a top 10 team without throwing a single freaking pass in the second half. Like, JJ McCarthy gets a lot of hype from ESPN. No football person in that committee is going to look at Michigan and say they rely on JJ McCarthy the way that Florida State relies on Jordan Travis or Michael Penix.
Absolutely.
Is relied upon
Absolutely.
At Washington. I mean, you literally beat Penn State without throwing for 100 yards. You threw 8 freaking passes in that game, none in the second half.
Right.
And beat
he didn't throw a touchdown for like 3 or 4 straight games.
Team on the road, right? Threw 3 picks against Bowling Green.
Right.
So no, I don't think the situation would be considered the same.
Okay.
Because I still think Michigan beats. I mean, because they'd have looked at it and they said, now here's the thing: if JJ McCarthy gets hurt, did they beat Ohio State? I don't know. I'm not a big JJ McCarthy fan, but I thought he did play pretty well in the second half against Ohio State. I did. I thought he played well in that game. He wasn't great, but he was good in that game.
Sure.
Could they have beat Ohio State without him? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really don't know.
Fair enough.
I don't know why we're having this long delay between the next release of bowls.
Because they know we're on live.
Yeah.
All against us.
Seriously. It would not shock me. Let's wait a little bit. Let's mess with Driscoll a little bit. This is absolutely ridiculous. And then, like, Brett McMurphy's gone completely silent, so he hasn't.
Yeah. He hasn't tweeted anything in 23 minutes. Like, come on, dude.
No,
your job.
Not since the Clemson game. So, I mean, these are the only bowls we're waiting on. These stupid ACC bowls are the only ones that we're waiting on.
I know.
So, yeah, I do think every situation is different, Vince, and I don't think resumes are different. Respect of the league is different, and how dependent upon players that some of these teams are. I'll read this one, Vince, because this is for you. Coach Vic asks, Vince, does the latest CFB poll prove Notre Dame doesn't need a conference? I don't think Florida State. I don't like Florida State, but an undefeated Power 5 not in the playoff is crazy. Much love, guys.
I agree with Vic that Florida State being out is crazy. I mean, they in my opinion, you got the criteria. They met the criteria. That's my opinion. Now, it's interesting to me that he's taking the stance of, does this show that Notre Dame does not need to be in a conference? I love that argument, because all I've heard was Notre Dame needs to be in a conference. They need to be a conference champ, all this stuff, where clearly that doesn't necessarily help you out in this particular case. So I love that. And I agree that the fact that, I've always agreed that Notre Dame doesn't need to be, in a conference to be a conference champion. And this does kind of throw some weight in that direction, right? It does. I kind of like where Vic's coming from on this one.
So again, we have to, we can be frustrated with what happened and still say, but we have to make sure we're talking about it in the proper context. This was not a just normal Florida State team that, had gone 13-0 and normal team. And they're down their starting quarterback, who was a pretty important part of that team.
For sure.
Right. So it's not just that a Power 5 team got snubbed who's undefeated for no context whatsoever other than just they got snubbed, right? And so, but you also have to remember that this is one of the rare years that I remember that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are all Power 5 conference champions. That's the other thing that's different. And because the number 2 SEC team dropped out of the top 5. Normally it's like that number 2 SEC team is like right there at 5, ready to just jump in, or Ohio State getting in last year. Like when you think about, who the conference champions were last year, the conference champion of the Pac-12 had 3 losses last year. It's a completely different situation. Completely different situation. And so you can't really look at it without being willing to kind of have that debate about this is not like other years because of the nature of just where some of these teams were. I mean, I'm looking at last year's. You had the Big 12 champ had 3 losses. The Pac-12 champ had 3 losses. The ACC champ had 2 losses. So you had Georgia was a conference champ, Michigan was a conference champ, and that was it. The next 3 conference champs were ranked what? 7th, 8th, and 9th. Because remember, Kansas State beat TCU in the Big 12 title game. So, like, you can't compare that to last year. It's just night and day difference because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 were conference champs.
Right.
And so that matters too. This isn't just now Notre Dame doesn't need to. No, you what this says to Notre Dame is don't have your starting quarterback get hurt in the last 2 games of the year. That's the only message this sends to anybody. Unless you're Bama or a Big Ten, unless you're an SEC or Big Ten team, because let's be real, if Bama was 12-1 and Jalen Milroe got hurt and Jordan Travis got hurt and Bama won their last 2 games, Bama's still getting in over Florida State. Let's be real about that.
100%.
Right? If both of them were out there without the start quarterbacks. That's just the perception aspect of it.
Yes.
So this is just a, hey, Notre Dame, hey, other teams, just don't lose your starting quarterback. That's the reality of it. So, no, I think that's the precedent in a sense. This isn't just a Power 5 champ because they're like, well, there's no merit in being a – like I hear it on ESPN a lot, and I just think it's not a convincing line of argument when you're saying, well, all these Power 5 champs – guys, there's 4 playoff spots and 5 Power 5 champs. Most years, not all Power 5 champs are in the conversation. I mean,
Agreed.
Utah –
they got too many losses.
Right, exactly. The year before in 2021, Utah was the Pac-12 champs, and they had, I believe, 3 losses again that season.
Right.
So it was a different animal. It was. I mean, the Big Ten champ got in that year. The SEC champ got in that year. And then you had who was the Big 12 champ that year? It was Baylor with 2 losses. Utah was number 11. So the Pac-12 champ had 3 losses. And then the ACC champ was Pitt with 2 losses. They were ranked 12th. So this is a much different situation than we've seen in past years because all 5 power conference, this is the first time in a long time that all 5 Power 5 conference champs had a legitimate beef about being in the college football playoff.
Sure. Yeah.
First time in a long time that was the case. I think you'd have to go back to not even then, because in 2016, the Big Ten champ had 2 losses. Because that was the last time, because in 2016, my thought was, well, Bama was a conference champ, Clemson was a conference champ, Ohio State was a conference champ, or Washington was a conference champ. But the Pac-12 champ was 9-3, and then the Big Ten champ didn't get in. Another Big Ten team did. Ohio State got in 11-1 because the Big Ten champ had 2 losses. So even then, it was not a similar situation. So I'm checking 2015. Yeah, I mean, you'd have to go back to 2015, Vince, before. No, because who was the Pac-12? Yeah, the highest ranked Pac-12 team in 2015. Yeah, Clemson, Stanford had 2 losses. So we've never seen anything like this before,
right,
where the top 5 teams were all Power 5 champs with 1 or 0 losses. We've never seen this before, as far as I can tell from what I'm looking at. So my dad just texted me, "Who's the new receivers coach?" I won't tell anyone.
I love it. Jimmy Page, thanks for the super chat. Great show, guys. Go Irish. Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yep.
We're trying. Garth Cassidy, thanks for the super chat. Brian, I heard KK is going to play in the bowl.
I heard that too.
As well.
Yeah. Now, I don't know how much you can expect from him in his first career college game, but it'll be great experience. And I know we don't talk a lot about Caleb Smith because he wasn't like a big name recruit. I love the kid. I had him as a 4-star recruit. I think he's a really good player. I don't know that I would say, hey, you can count on him to give you 30, 40 snaps a game. I don't think. But having him in practice and getting that work for him is going to be great for him kind of going into next year. But if he's able to help you, great. I just don't know how much I would expect from him. But I would love to see KK Smith go out there and produce. Would absolutely love that. That'd be great. That'd be great.
John A1, our guy, thank you for the super chat. if both tackles opt out of the bowl, who plays tackle?
I mean, all I can tell you, John, is right now the backup left tackle is Tosh Baker, and the backup right tackle is Emil Wagner. I would assume that would be the case.
I would agree. Those are the two logical options. I mean, things could change. Depth charts can get fluctuated during bowl prep, but yeah, I would agree with that. That is probably the case as well, based on what we've seen all year.
Let's go here.
Oh, Michael Ryan, while it's always the goal to go and win a national championship, how important is it for Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame to win a New Year's Six Bowl? Well, those don't exist after this year. So it would be winning a playoff game next year.
I gotta go. I think they'll all be kind of allocated to semifinals and stuff like that. Right?
They are. So like the first round of games is going to be on college campuses. And then once they get down to 8 teams, the New Year's Six, quote unquote, bowls get involved. And then you win that one. Now you're down to 4 again. And now you get to the Final Four situation. So if they win a New Year's Six, quote unquote, if they win a New Year's Six, that means they won 2 playoff games actually moving forward. So is it important? Yeah, it's important. It does, but it's not going to be as easy, I would say, as it has been in the past to just go and just win 1 game. They have to win 2 games in order to win a New Year's Six game. Does that make sense? Maybe a little bit more difficult.
No,
a little bit more difficult. All right, Paul Olmstead, thanks for the super chat. I live in Michigan, and their fans are insufferable. Not for an SEC new national championship again, but I cannot live here if Michigan wins.
Yeah,
Saban, you're my only hope.
100%.
I could throw a golf ball or hit a golf ball to Michigan where we live, and it's too close.
If I had to, if it comes down to me, either Michigan wins it all or Bama wins another one. That's a no-brainer for me. Okay, cool. Go Roll Tide. Yeah. I mean, I'll say it again. Roll Tide. I mean,
100%.
That's just how it's going to be.
Yep, 100%.
100% how it's going to be.
Yes, they are insufferable. I'm surrounded by Michigan fans at my other job. They're everywhere. They're everywhere around here. Yeah. They just are. And so I'm with you. I am with you.
I had a big super chat from John Lyons. I was going to hold off on this until the very end and just to give him a big thank you because just didn't even leave a question. Just wanted to give us support today. And I really appreciate that. But he was asking about what happened to his question. And I didn't want him to think that we were dissing him because we definitely were not. I appreciate you very, very much, John.
He said he had a question after that.
Okay. I didn't see your question.
I'll start for you. There you go. I threw it into the starred area.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, let's just answer it.
He says, I asked if the ACC is messing with the bowl for Notre Dame.
I mean, I got to think they're not that stupid. I mean, is it possible? Yeah, it's possible because nowadays, like anything's possible. But I just have to think that they're just not that stupid.
Right.
I mean, because look, they here's the thing. If you're the ACC, you're worried about survival. I mean, let's be real about that. They're worried about survival right now. And especially with Florida State complaining, I mean, this is only going to ramp up Florida State's desire to be out.
Yeah.
I mean, now I don't think it should because it's like, well, if you go to the SEC, bro, you're not 13-0 this year. So you're not having the conversation. If you're in the SEC this year, you're not undefeated and you're not in this conversation anyway.
Right.
But I look at it and I say, I mean, Notre Dame can be their saving grace, so to speak. You really want to piss Notre Dame off and just give them more reasons to tell you to go stick it where the sun don't shine? Do you really want to do that with a new president or a new AD coming in? You really want to, and a new president going to be coming in? You really want to say, hey, we're going to screw you guys over out of millions of dollars just because for some spite? I just don't think they're that stupid. Unless here's the thing, where Jim Phillips come from? I'm putting my conspiracy hat on, Vince. My tinfoil hat's coming on. Where did Jim Phillips come from? Where was he come from? He was the AD at Northwestern. This could be a Big Ten plant to blow up the ACC. I've said this to you before. Hey, we'll get you a really sweet, cushy job in our league when you go kill the ACC. Mm-hmm. Right? I just don't. He hasn't done things that make me think that this would be the first time he did that. So, end of the day, I just don't think that they're that stupid.
Yeah, and that's fair. Look, one thing we can all count on is all of these league presidents, or for the most part in the leagues, they're making business decisions and they're driven by money. And the ACC knows darn well if they lose Notre Dame in whatever agreement that they have, they lose money.
Okay.
Period.
So this thing from Brett McMurphy saying is that the ACC's top 3 picks, the Pop-Tarts, Gator, and Holiday, could not select the Irish, sources said. So I got to think that's pure spin. Like no one has ever mentioned at all in the last month that Notre Dame was not an option for Pop-Tarts, Gator, and Holiday.
Yeah.
I got to think somebody would have known that already. You know, like I didn't think Gator was, because normally you can only, like Notre Dame's, you can't be in one, like
you can only do so many games, and you can't.
Right.
Yeah, once you do it, you have to wait for a few years.
So like maybe Pop-Tarts isn't because they played in 2019, but like why would the Holiday Bowl not be an option for Notre Dame?
Right.
Unless you're saying, well, because of USC, you're not going to get a rematch, so it's not a USC. But I just, yeah. So, but I mean, how did people not know this going in? Right. I mean, so that's weird.
Yeah, that is very,
very weird,
strange, and that's ACC spin right there. But yeah, what was he saying? The Dukes, the Mayo Bowl, the Pinstripe, the Sun, and the Military Bowl are the only ones that are left, and then the only teams that are left is Notre Dame, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, and Miami.
Right, which are some big names. Somebody just said Gator Bowl is Big Ten SEC. The Gator Bowl is Big Ten SEC or the ACC. Notre Dame has tie-ins. Just like the Orange Bowl is SEC, ACC versus SEC or Big Ten. Some of these bowls have 3 tie-ins. It just depends.
Correct.
Like they'll take the highest side. ACC is always in. Yeah. ACC champ is always in, unless they're in the playoff, and then it's the next highest ranked ACC team. But their opponent could be big, could be SEC. So a lot of these are like that. And that's why Notre Dame played in the Gator Bowl last year and not a Big Ten team, because they took Notre Dame as it.
Mike Nolan with a super chat. Thank you very much. Is ACC dissing Notre Dame as not a full member and spite the committee and TV over Florida State being passed on?
I mean, there's no justification for saying that. Like we're saying here, like kind of like 1 + 1 = 4. It doesn't make sense because they're pissed about what happened to Florida State. They're going to screw over Notre Dame, unless you're saying like they're going to put Notre Dame in a bowl game. Like Notre Dame's TV ratings are not going to really matter a whole lot, to be honest with you.
Right.
And you know, because it is going to be what it is. I mean, no matter what. But I just don't think that they would diss Notre Dame to get back at somebody other than Notre Dame. Now, if we found out down the road that, like, you know, Jack Swarbrick or Pete Pavakwa did something insulting to the ACC and this is payback for something like that, sure. I mean, okay, whatever. If they're mad at Notre Dame for forcing Stanford, Cal, and SMU upon them, sure, whatever. I mean, but you're about to get an 11-2 football team in your league next year with SMU, by the way. So you're welcome. But I kind of look at it, Vince, and I mean, part of me is like, you know, we all have that gut reaction, but I just don't see how that would make any, like, there's no benefit to the ACC for that. None. You're not going to get the same exposure for your biggest bowl games. You're going to piss off Notre Dame and ruin any chance that they have to ever get them in as a full-time team. Why would they do that? There's no merit to that. And if somebody thinks, well, they're doing this in Notre Dame to try to get them to convince them to join, they're not that stupid either. I mean, that was the Big Ten's problem for years. Jim Delaney thought he could punk Notre Dame into joining. He could insult them and threaten them, and you're never going to play any of our teams. And they're saying, fine, well, we won't play in your teams anymore. We'll just go play everybody else. And you know, that's just the reality of it. So I understand where you're coming from, but I mean, could it be true? Sure. I have no evidence it's not, but I have no evidence it is. It just doesn't make sense.
Agreed. Aiden Benami, thank you very much for the super chat. Best 4: Bama, Georgia, Washington, Texas. Scum is not top 4.
Well, I mean, I tend to agree as far as the cheating thing, but it's hard for me to say that they're not one of the top 4 based on how the season played out. I mean, Bama played 2 top 10 teams and they lost to one of them, right? Georgia played 2 top 10 teams. They lost to one of them. Texas played 1 top 10 team and won. Michigan played 2 top 10 teams and won both of them. I mean, I understand that, But I think just resume, Vince, you can't keep Michigan out. The only way to keep Michigan out is because of the cheating thing. That's it. That's it. Last 3, Vince. We're going to get out of here.
All righty. Let's see. ND Milton fan. Thanks for the super chat. College football playoff much easier if Michigan is banned for cheating. Well, yeah.
100%.
Then it's no brainer who gets in.
Yeah.
It's a no brainer.
Yep. Jimmy
Page, thanks for the super chat. Karma Gods, cheaters versus Saban as an opponent opposed to Florida State. I'm happy that they're not.
Yeah, we talked about that
in that regard. Yeah.
Although I still would have said, I'd like to see what Florida State can do with a month to prepare.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, true.
Yeah.
Shiver Me Fingers, one of my favorite names. Thanks for the super chat. If Notre Dame joins the Big Ten someday, what is the short list of schools you think the conference should chase to join with Notre Dame to get to 20 teams? Good gracious.
They're at what, 16 right now or 18? They're at 18 right now, right?
I thought it was at 16.
No, because they were at 14 already, right? They're at 14 right now. They're 7 on each conference, correct? And they're adding 4 teams. They're adding USC, UCLA, Washington,
Oregon. Pac-12ers now, yeah. So it's only one other team that they would have to.
If they were smart, they'd try to go get Florida State. They'd try to convince Florida State to leave the SEC and say, hey, because does geography really matter? Florida State's closer to you than freaking any of the Pac-12 teams are. So why not? Florida State's pissed off. They don't want to be there. So Notre Dame and Florida State. Think about that, what that would do for the league.
Right.
You know what I mean? So here's the last one. Now this is the last one.
Terrence and Ashley Bergen, is the ACC holding ND if Florida State is considering holding out of the orange? Well, they're not considering holding out of the orange.
Well, there's internet talk about it, but I don't know that Florida State would do that. It doesn't make. Why?
Florida head coach put out a statement that they're going to the Orange Bowl.
Yeah, so let's just say this. Let's say, for example, Vince, that Florida State's players are pissed and they don't want to play in that bowl game. This is a school that's hurting for money. Why would they give up? Because if they said they're not going to play in the Orange Bowl, the ACC says, well, you're not going to get any bowl revenue. We're not going to give you any bowl revenue. It would make no sense for them to do that.
Exactly. And that's the biggest cut.
Yes. Is there a gut reaction to that? Sure. Terrence, there's a gut reaction to that. Screw you. We're just, but I think if anything, Florida State's gonna have the opposite reaction. We're gonna go to this bowl game and we're gonna destroy whoever we play.
Exactly.
Oh, you want to get Georgia? We're gonna show what we can do against Georgia. Now, will they? I don't know, but that's their mentality going in. You know what I mean?
And that should be their mentality going
exactly.
in. Yeah.
We'll show you. We'll go play Georgia and kick their butt and show you made a mistake by not having us in. Something like that. And then get paid very handsomely to win or lose in the Orange Bowl. So I understand where all of us are coming from, and we're all just trying to understand kind of what the freaking heck is going on right now. And Vince, we're going to get off here after this. Dang well, as soon as we hit end, they're going to announce who the bowl opponent is.
They
100%.
That's fine.
100%.
It is what it is.
But we are out of super chats, my friend. And I know you have to go do some housework.
Yep, so. I do. I have a toilet to install. So thanks everybody for joining us. We tried. We were on for 2 hours and 22 minutes. Waiting for Notre Dame to get their bowl announcement, and we're still waiting. So it is what it is. We're going to have plenty of time to talk about it over the next couple of weeks. Don't worry about that. Tomorrow, like we said, we did the super chats today, but tomorrow's a mailbag. So you get after it tomorrow with all of your questions in the afternoon. And then Sean and I will be back tomorrow evening. No, I'm not sure. There'll be a show tomorrow evening at 6:00. I think I have to go with my kids around the school for next year. But anyway, there will be a show. And they will be talking about whatever bowl game Notre Dame gets into. And, of course, breaking down the college football playoff.
I will record something tonight as just a, potentially. I may record something tonight depending on who it is, or we may just wait till tomorrow to talk about it. But, yeah.
We got plenty of time to talk about it, guys. And
I can't believe the poise you're showing for not responding to that, Vince, is just –
the Shiver Me Fingers Bowl, I would be all over that one because that tells me that there's probably a bunch of chicken fingers around.
Can I just say one thing? If I'm Marcus Freeman and I'm in the Mayo Bowl, the first thing I'm saying, don't even think about pouring mayo on me after this.
That would be so disgusting. And there's there's no upside for Marcus Freeman getting doused with mayonnaise. Zero.
None.
It's not like some of these other schools that they're trying to be,
it's a clown show. It looks like it's a joke. It's like, what are we what was the show we watched as kids, Vince, on Nickelodeon? Double Dare? right?
What double dare? Heck yeah.
Yeah, like this is double dare.
Yeah.
I'm a grown freaking man. You're not pouring mayonnaise on me. Like
no, not a
kidding?
chance.
First of all, I would hurl if I had that much mayonnaise thrown on me.
You would.
I just would. But no, there's no reason for that. Screw that. Yeah. No, you're not throwing mayonnaise on me.
It's a hard pass.
And I don't think they do it right after the game. They do it at like some thing, like some event. They have you sit down and they pour it on you, which makes it even more lit. Like, no, you were not putting mayonnaise on me if we win this football game. It's not happening. Not happening. So,
all right, folks. Well, that's going to do it. Yeah, that's going to do it for us. So make sure you hit that like button, the subscribe button, the notification bell, share with your family and friends. Like I said, we're going to be back. We're going to be breaking this thing down for the next few weeks. And wherever Notre Dame ends up, still don't know, but we'll find out. And so for Brian, I'm Vince, and we will talk to you next time on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Thanks, everybody.
So I don't want to hit end because I know as soon as we do, they're going to announce it.
I know. Yes, they will.